Chapter 692. Not long ago, the Dark Shadow Sovereign had attempted to assassinate Qin Wentian. At that time, his dual constellation trapped Qin Wentian within, frenziedly torturing Qin Wentian, almost taking Qin Wentian's life. The Qin Wentian at that time, other than igniting his own self to unleash the immortal vanquishing swordplay, he had no idea how to break the Dark Shadow Sovereign's constellation. But now, the situation seemed to be reversed. Similarly, the Dark Shadow Sovereign unleashed his constellation, but this time around, it was the Dark Shadow Sovereign who had no idea how to break Qin Wentian's constellation. Any celestial phenomenon ascendant would have their own unique constellation. From the battle between Qin Wentian and the Dark Shadow Sovereign, one could faintly see the countless transformations of constellations. The powerful Dark Shadow Sovereign had a cultivation base at the third level of celestial phenomenon, but Qin Wentian had just condensed his own constellation not too long ago, and the Dark Shadow Sovereign already felt the threat of death looming over him. At this moment, the Dark Shadow Sovereign was still hidden within his second constellation. Rustling sounds rang out unceasingly as ancient vines frenziedly attacked Qin Wentian. However, the vines that extended out from his constellation were directly shredded apart by the fearsome destructive particles. Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at the darkness of his constellation as he coldly spoke. "It's useless. If you want to injure me, you have to personally assassinate me. You won't be able to do it if you simply use your constellation." His cold voice was filled with tyranny and confidence. That tempest soared up into the air and started to stir the constellation of the Dark Shadow Sovereign. Regardless of the ancient vine constellation or the netherworld constellation, in his dreamworld constellation, Qin Wentian wanted to see where the Dark Shadow Sovereign could hide. Within his dreamworld constellation, the Dark Shadow Sovereign's ancient vine constellation was completely crippled. It was completely useless. How could he trap Qin Wentian? Right now he was trapped by Qin Wentian within the dreamworld constellation. There was no way for him to exit even if he wanted to. As for attacking, the ancient vine constellation's attacks were all insta-killed by the destructive particles contained within the dreamworld constellation. Right now, the Dark Shadow Sovereign could only borrow the power of his second constellation. Right now he was still concealed within it, only to see that at this moment, the constellation transformed into a river of darkness that gushed towards Qin Wentian from all directions. Qin Wentian stood proudly in the sky. Destructive air currents swirled around him and swept towards the river of darkness. Shadows of Dark Shadow Sovereigns appeared and attacked Qin Wentian at the same time. Boom! Qin Wentian took a step forward, and a force that could suppress everything bloomed. Qin Wentian seemed to have transformed into a god of war, insufferably arrogant. Destroy! With a roar of rage, all the shadows around him were destroyed. The true body of the Dark Shadow Sovereign appeared as he stabbed out with a long spear that resembled the netherworld. Black-colored devilish energy revolved around the long spear as a black vortex manifested, wanting to devour Qin Wentian within. The size of this vortex was so great that it could instantly devour 100 people. Qin Wentian inclined his head slightly. He could see the cold and gloomy eyes of the Dark Shadow Sovereign. A terrifying light enveloped his body, and he was like a fiend god. With a roar of rage, he blasted out with his palms, manifesting numerous heaven-suppressing palm imprints at the same time. At this instant, one could see boundless destructive tempests flowing towards the vortex of darkness, frenziedly clashing with each other. Rumbling sounds of destruction shook the heavens and earth. The Dark Shadow Sovereign roared in rage again and again. However, Qin Wentian took a step forward and directly entered the vortex. Many shadows appeared at the same time as the Dark Shadow Sovereign launched another attack. His feet stomped on the ground and his palms blasted the sky. In all directions, streams of destructive light brushed past, even more resplendent than the stars. Soft sounds rang out. The Dark Shadow Sovereign felt his internal organs shattering from the pressure. He retreated explosively only to see Qin Wentian snorting coldly. He grabbed out with his hand as a boundless destructive might enveloped the Dark Shadow Sovereign, trapping him within the gigantic palm imprint. Qin Wentian, your time of death will not be far. The Dark Shadow Sovereign understood that there was no hope of survival. He let out a roar of rage. the Dark Shadow Sovereign would definitely kill him. Destroy! Qin Wentian's palms slammed down. Sizzling sounds rang out as boundless destructive light directly drilled into the Dark Shadow Sovereign's body, tearing it apart. Many interspatial rings flew out from his body, but with a wave of his hand, Qin Wentian kept all of them into his interspatial pouch. The Dark Shadow Sovereign and the Star River Lord of the Star River Association were both extremely wealthy, right? After killing the two supreme experts, Qin Wentian waved his hands as the constellation in the dream world vanished. In an instant, the entire space returned to a state of tranquility, as though nothing had happened at all. In the Star River Association, numerous gazes were focused on Qin Wentian. That magnificent silhouette still stood proudly in the air. However, the Star River Lord and the Dark Shadow Sovereign had already vanished forever. This caused the hearts of everyone in the Star River Association to tremble violently. Another two supreme experts of Grand Xia had fallen. Not only that, these two were true experts who were hidden in the shadows, and were even stronger compared to the ascendants of Grand Xia on the surface. However, no one could obstruct this supreme genius who unified Grand Xia. He wanted to unify Grand Xia, forcing all the ascendants to submit to him. No one dared to defy his orders. He wanted the Star River Association to have no way to establish a foothold in Grand Xia. Similarly, no one in Grand Xia dared to defy his orders. Even the Star River Lord and the Dark Shadow Sovereign of the Star River Association were killed without mercy. They were forcefully wiped out by Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian's gaze swept over the members of the Star River Association. His cold voice rang out once more. From today onwards, I want the Star River Association to cease to exist in Grand Xia. Scram. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the members of the Star River Association dispersed, leaving this place. The Star River Lord and the Dark Shadow Sovereign had already died in the hands of Qin Wentian. What else could they do? Fighting against Qin Wentian was simply courting death. Some of the upper echelons of the Star River Association coldly glanced at Qin Wentian, before leaving with reluctance. Their eyes flickered with killing intent. When they reported this to their superiors, Qin Wentian would die without a doubt. Qin Wentian would pay a price for his actions today. Qin Wentian left and returned to the royal palace of Grand Xia. But soon after, another commotion occurred in Grand Xia. Hundreds of branches of the Star River Association were uprooted and completely destroyed. However, they didn't kill anyone. They just didn't allow the Star River Association to establish a foothold in Grand Xia. Only now did the people of Grand Xia realize how terrifying the power of the Star River Association was. The deeds of the Star River Association and the Dark Shadow Sovereign also surfaced, shocking everyone. Even the upper echelons of Grand Xia easily neglected the existence of the Star River Association, let alone ordinary people. This low-profile and mysterious power was actually so vast and tyrannical. Many people had died because they offended them. The people of Grand Xia couldn't help but to applaud Qin Wentian's decision. The resolution of the ruler of Grand Xia was truly something ordinary people wouldn't be able to match up to. After this matter, Qin Wentian quietly cultivated in Grand Xia, no longer interfering with external affairs. He entered a state of closed-door seclusion. Although he had already stepped into the celestial phenomenon realm, Qin Wentian still had many things he wanted to do. Condensing his fifth astral soul, cultivating the fiend god heavenly suppression art, comprehending offensive innate techniques, etc. As for Grand Xia, the Star River Association had already been uprooted. The authority of Grand Xia was also stable. At the very least, there was no one or major power that could shake the prestige of the Grand Xia Empire. Naturally, Qin Wentian's philosophy was to nurture talents for Grand Xia, allowing Grand Xia to prosper and grow stronger. He didn't care about maintaining his authority. With such a philosophy, he believed that as long as time passed, Grand Xia would only grow stronger and stronger. Because of Qin Wentian's existence, in the royal sacred region far away from Grand Xia, two transcendent powers were currently in conflict. One of the transcendent powers was none other than the hegemon of the Grand Xia Empire, the Royal Sacred Sect. The Royal Sacred Sect had governed Grand Xia for tens of thousands of years, and was incomparably powerful. But recently, the royal sacred region encountered an unprecedented provocation. Qin Wentian domineeringly killed Xia Sheng in the royal sacred sect and left safely. Because of this, the people of the royal sacred sect couldn't swallow this humiliation. Hence, the grand wedding of Qin Wentian happened in Chu. However, that day was the darkest day in the history of the royal sacred sect. All the experts of the royal sacred sect who went there, including high-stage celestial phenomenon ascendants, didn't return alive. Such a matter had never happened before in the history of the royal sacred sect. If this matter was circulated to the royal sacred region, it was unknown how intense the waves of commotion it would cause. Because the location of the incident was in Chu, the distance was simply too far. Hence, the transcendent powers of the royal sacred region didn't know of this. However, in the internal department of the royal sacred sect, this matter had already caused great waves of commotion. During these days, many people came to pay their respects to the sacred emperor outside the sacred royal hall, but the sacred emperor had yet to manifest his will. Until today, outside the sacred royal hall, an incomparably powerful fluctuation could be felt. After which, a silhouette appeared in and out of existence, shining with a resplendent light. We pay our respects to the sacred emperor. Everyone knelt down. What's the matter? A voice drifted out from that Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian held his grand wedding in Chu. The experts of my royal sacred sect who went there were all killed. A voice trembled, causing a terrifying might to permeate the air. The sacred emperor coldly continued, I've already said that the matter back then will end here. Who told you guys to take revenge? Sacred emperor, we have to avenge the humiliation we suffered back then. This place is the royal sacred region. Someone inclined his head as he spoke. What do you guys know? Frogs at the bottom of a well. The sacred emperor coldly replied. The medicine sovereign is already on the same level as me. As the sound of his voice faded, the experts of the royal sacred sect all trembled violently. This news to them was like a thunderbolt from the blue. The royal sacred sect had always been the hegemon of the royal sacred region. Why? Because their sacred emperor was unrivaled in the royal sacred region, a legendary existence. And now, the sacred emperor was telling them that the medicine sovereign was also an expert of the same level. They finally understood why that undying old man didn't die every time his lifespan was about to end, and why the medicine sovereign dared to go to the royal sacred sect to protect Qin Wentian. Initially, they thought it was because of the medicine sovereign's qualifications. But from the looks of it now, they were too stupid. In front of a legendary existence, what did qualifications count for? Those below that level didn't even have the qualifications to speak to the sacred emperor. Since the medicine sovereign dared to appear, it meant that he had already stepped into that level. However, the medicine sovereign went overboard this time around. The royal sacred region is still the world of the royal sacred sect. Since he dares to do this, you guys go and kill Qin Wentian. If the medicine sovereign interferes again, report back to me. The sacred emperor's voice was ice cold. He initially didn't want to bother with the matters here, but he didn't expect such a twist to occur. But since this is the case, so what if a junior has outstanding talent? We obey the sacred emperor's command. The eyes of everyone flickered with sharpness as they obeyed. Chapter 693. Within the sacred royal city, there was a vast stretch of ancient palaces. This place had countless years of history, even longer compared to the royal sacred sect. This vast ancient hall had witnessed the rise and fall of the major powers of the royal sacred region. In fact, even before this world was known as the royal sacred region, this hall had already existed. When the first generation sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect ruled the world, the name of the royal sacred region was changed to the royal sacred region. Countless major powers in this region had changed, but only this ancient hall remained unchanged. Even the first generation sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect silently approved of its existence, not daring to destroy it. This place was none other than the headquarters of the Star River Association in the royal sacred region. Today, there were people from the Grand Xia branch who returned with a piece of news. All the branches of the Star River Association in Grand Xia had been destroyed. Qin Wentian, who unified Grand Xia, didn't permit the existence of the Star River Association within the borders of Grand Xia. When this news spread out, the shock and anger of the experts of the Star River Association was even more intense compared to the Royal Sacred Sect. How many years had it been? The Star River Association had infiltrated every inch of land under the heavens. In any large city, they would set up a branch of the Star River Association. This incomparably secretive organization operated day and night, and had the most powerful information network in the Royal Sacred Region. They were able to see through everything in the Royal Sacred Region. For every outstanding character, how strong they were, what level their talent was at, how strong their background was. Unless it was extremely secretive, nothing could be hidden from the eyes of the Star River Association. With regards to the information about Qin Wentian, the Star River Association had made many changes. Qin Wentian, whose name shook the entire Royal Sacred Region, and who became the overlord of Grand Xia, had long since become a character that the Star River Association paid close attention to. Right now, the information about him was recorded in a transparent scroll in the headquarters of the Star River Association. In the headquarters of the Star River Association, only those characters who stood at the pinnacle of the Grand Xia Empire would be recorded in a transparent scroll. For example, the Sacred Emperor of the Royal Sacred Sect, the various vice-sect leaders, the Medicine Sovereign, the leaders of the 9 great sects, etc. Right now, the scroll that recorded Qin Wentian was the same as them. From this, one could see how much importance the Star River Association placed on Qin Wentian. At this moment, in the headquarters of the Star River Association, there was a person currently flipping through the information regarding Qin Wentian. From what happened in Heaven's Wall City, to the conflict between him and Miran, to the assassination attempt by the Dark Shadow Sovereign, it was very easy to tell that Qin Wentian didn't have a good impression of the Star River Association. As for why Qin Wentian wanted to uproot the Star River Association in Grand Xia, it was very easy to understand. The records of Qin Wentian's strength were also very detailed. It even included the fact that he could transform into a rock with the demonic divinity sacrificial rite, and use the immortal vanquishing sword. Only one column was rather vague, and that was about Qin Wentian's background. Qin Wentian grew up in the Qin mansion of Chu Nation's Heaven's Wall City. His adoptive father, Qin Chuan, could be ignored. Qin Wentian's other godfather, the human emperor of Yi country, Yi Qingyun. His wife was the disciple of the medicine sovereign, Mo Qingcheng. Qin Wentian's background was unknown. Appendix. During Qin Wentian's wedding in Chu Nation, a mysterious expert appeared. He was a disabled person who raised Qin Wentian. He brought along many masked experts, and his strength is unknown. Appendix. In the Moon Continent, when Qin Wentian slaughtered the Pill Emperor Hall with the demon sword, a mysterious expert appeared and rescued him. As for who it was, it's unknown. It was unknown who taught Qin Wentian the immortal technique and sword art. All of these pointed to the fact that Qin Wentian might have an extraordinary background. However, even the intelligence network of the Star River Association was unable to find out anything. They could only speculate that he might be the orphan of an extremely powerful existence. However, no matter how powerful Qin Wentian's background was, how could he be stronger than the Star River Association? As the Grand Hall Lord of the Star River Association in the Royal Sacred Region, he was sent here by the upper echelons. How could he not know what sort of existence the Star River Association was? How could a mere orphan of an extremely powerful existence dare to provoke them? However, his authority was limited. As the Grand Hall Lord of the Royal Sacred Region, he had a mission to accomplish. Every 100 years, he had to send resources and nurture geniuses to the Royal Sacred Region. This was his responsibility, and the authority he had no way to surpass the Royal Sacred Region. Once he encountered an existence he couldn't defeat in the Royal Sacred Region, it would be extremely troublesome for him. After all, if he reported such a matter to the upper echelons, he, as the Grand Hall Lord, would undoubtedly be doing a bad job. This was also the reason why, although the Star River Association had a transcendent background, they still kept a low profile in the Royal Sacred Region. They wouldn't go out to antagonize others, nor would they fight for the position of the hegemon. Their goal was to complete the mission given to them by the upper echelons. He took out a brush and a piece of paper, after which he wrote a letter. With a wave of his hand, the letter floated outside as he commanded. Send this letter to Qin Wentian of Grand Xia. Roger. The person outside replied, after which the sound of footsteps could be heard. In the royal sacred region, within the immortal palace, Di Tian stared at the red-haired old man in front of him. The red-haired old man was panting heavily as he stared at Di Tian. After a long time, the red-haired old man finally laughed uproariously. Good. To think that you would be able to defeat all of us in such a short period of time. Go on, let's see what's waiting for you. Di Tian's countenance gleamed with sharpness. Although Qin Wentian had broken through, Di Tian hadn't condensed his constellation yet. His cultivation base was still at the peak of Heavenly Dipper, but Qin Wentian's insights were also his insights. Although he didn't condense his Dreamworld constellation, just the fusion of true intents was already extremely powerful. In addition to his illusory demonic energy, Fiend Transformation Art, Bloodline Protection, and Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art, he could finally defeat these immortals who had their cultivation bases suppressed. Many thanks for Senior's guidance during these days. If I can obtain the inheritance of the immortal palace, I will definitely grant all of you your freedom. Di Tian bowed. Go on. The red-haired old man waved his hands. Di Tian nodded and his silhouette flickered as he flew forward. Everywhere he passed by, there were many immortals who had their cultivation bases suppressed. All of them were smiling at Di Tian. Good fellow, you can do it. You are much stronger compared to this old man back then. A muscular man grinned. The eyes of the dispirited young woman on the lake seemed to have regained some luster. She stared at Di Tian as he silently advanced forward. He has already completed his challenge. Next, she didn't know what would be waiting for him. Di Tian's countenance was like lightning. He continued on his way, traversing a vast distance before he saw a slanted mountain peak in front of him. On that mountain peak, there were two silhouettes. One was sitting while the other was standing. Behind them, there was a simple house. The person sitting on the slanted mountain peak was an old man. His hair was curled up and his robes were tattered. He had a smile on his face as he stared at Di Tian. As for the person standing, it was a cold-looking young man clad in black. His entire body exuded a cold intent, and the eyes he used to stare at Di Tian were sharper than blades, as though they could pierce through Di Tian's soul. What a cold person! Di Tian stared at the cold-looking young man. Among the people he met before, this young man's aura was the coldest, causing people to not dare to get close to him. Come on up. The old man spoke to Di Tian. Di Tian nodded lightly. He slowly walked up, arriving before the old man and the young man. Being able to defeat so many immortals at the peak of Heavenly Dipper, this already proves your immense potential. But if it wasn't for those fellows intentionally going easy on you, you wouldn't have survived until today. The old man narrowed his eyes as he stared at Di Tian. Di Tian nodded. He was very clear about this point. Because he didn't defeat the buried immortals from the outside world. Instead, he relied on the key given to him by the Xia Emperor to enter. At that time, his strength was far from what it was now. If those immortals wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping their palms. However, to be able to improve at such a godly speed in such a short period of time, it's truly rare. In that case, from now onwards, you will start to comprehend this art. If you can succeed in comprehending it within a year, I will consider it as you passing the test. At that time, you will become the lord of this immortal palace, and at the same time, you will also obtain an unimaginable inheritance. The old man faintly spoke, after which, he waved his hands as both he and the cold-looking young man vanished from sight. In front of Di Tian, a boundlessly vast painting appeared. Countless diagrams and diagrams interweaved within the painting, resembling a painting of the Great Tao. Di Tian swept his gaze over the painting. Very swiftly, his eyes felt as though they were about to sink into it. At this moment, a supremely powerful sealing energy gushed forth from the painting, shining brightly as it directly landed on Di Tian. Bang! Di Tian explosively retreated. He closed his eyes and couldn't help but groan in pain. When he opened his eyes again, he actually didn't dare to look at the painting. Earlier, when he glanced at the painting, It was as though he saw an unfathomable sealing ability that could seal everything. Not bad. From the air, the voice of the old man drifted over to Tian. I advise you to break through first before you attempt to comprehend it. If not, based on your current strength, I'm afraid you won't be able to endure it. Remember, you only have a year's time. If you fail to comprehend it, I will wipe away all the memories you have after you entered the immortal palace. Tian's body trembled slightly as his eyes gleamed with a dazzling light. At the same time, in the external world, in the Grand Xia Empire, Qin Wentian, who was currently in closed-door seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. He inclined his head and stared at the starry skies as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. Sealing a supreme existence. He sealed the immortals in the tomb, sealed the cultivation bases of the immortals, and even sealed the entire immortal palace. To that supreme existence, everything can be sealed. Qin Wentian mumbled. He could faintly sense that the lord of this immortal palace was definitely an extremely powerful existence, and was proficient in sealing. Once he inherited the legacy of the lord of this immortal palace, not only would he be able to undo the seals on the immortals, he would also be able to obtain that terrifying sealing inheritance. Tian's fifth astral soul must definitely be a sealing-type astral soul. What about my fifth astral soul? Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the skies. After which, he closed his eyes again as his perception extended towards the 9 astral rivers in the 9 heavenly layers. The terrifying power of his perception rose unceasingly, transcending the boundaries of the 9 astral rivers. In the blink of an eye, his perception arrived at the 5th heavenly layer, but it didn't stop there. It continued ascending upwards, reaching the 6th heavenly layer. At this moment, Qin Wentian's perception was already feeling extremely unbearable. The shadow of Qin Wentian's perception in the air seemed to be changing shape. After crossing the 6th heavenly layer, I would be able to enter the 7th heavenly layer. This is a huge leap. Qin Wentian's heart was filled with determination. His perception frenziedly surged upwards, allowing the terrifying pressure to bore down on him. Yet he still managed to protect his perception. Finally, his perception broke through the resplendent astral river, stepping into the 7th heavenly layer. Over here, there was a completely different scene. Chapter 694. Qin Wentian's perception floated about in this boundlessly vast starry space. As he stared at the resplendent constellations, terrifying waves rose up in his heart. Many of the constellations here were different from those in the lower 6th heavenly layer. Not only was the aura exuded by these constellations stronger, it was also because of the uniqueness of these constellations. With a single glance, these constellations gave Qin Wentian an intense visual impact. Is that a gigantic tortoise? Qin Wentian stared at a constellation not far away from him. This was a demonic beast-type constellation. It had the shape of a gigantic tortoise, blotting out the skies and blotting out the sun. It was unknown how vast it was. This gigantic tortoise also had the body of a serpent, exuding an incomparably demonic aura. It was as though there was a pair of eyes staring at him. This isn't a gigantic tortoise, it's a Xuanwu beast. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. If he could form an innate connection with this constellation, he would be able to summon a Xuanwu beast, possessing a terrifying defense. An intense piercing pain shot through his body, causing Qin Wentian's heart to clench. The 7th heavenly layer was a huge leap compared to the 6th heavenly layer. The astral souls condensed from the astral souls would no longer be golden in color, but the pressure here was also extremely strong. Although his perception could allow him to step into the 7th heavenly layer, he couldn't stay here for too long. He had to find the constellation he wanted to form an innate connection with as soon as possible. His perception sped through the starry space. Qin Wentian saw an extremely powerful constellation. This constellation was like a gigantic mountain that spanned across the sky, resembling an ancient divine mountain. It was unknown how heavy it was, but just by sensing it from afar, Qin Wentian felt as though he was about to be crushed by the weight of the divine mountain. Qin Wentian's heart pounded violently. He had an impulse to send his perception over. However, he still managed to restrain himself. His perception moved through the astral river, staring at the incomparably bizarre constellations. He even saw a terrifying vortex that resembled a black hole. Within that vortex, there seemed to be a pair of eyes that could devour everything. There were no other constellations in the surroundings. It was as though in this domain, no other constellations were allowed to exist. If not, the vortex would devour them all into the vortex. Every single constellation contains a terrifying amount of power within. Qin Wentian's heart trembled, but he still continued his search. He hoped that the astral soul he condensed from the astral soul he condensed this time around would be compatible with the cultivation art he cultivated. Only then would he be able to unleash the full potential of his astral soul and cultivation art. Qin Wentian mainly cultivated two great immortal arts, the Fiend God Suppression art and the Fiend God Body Refinement art. There was no need to doubt the power of these two immortal arts. Their offensive power was extremely terrifying, and the immortal devil body refining art could even create a real immortal devil body. Using one's physical body to fight against immortal devils, how terrifying was that? Astral souls could amplify a stellar martial cultivator's attacks, but ultimately, it was for the sake of a stellar martial cultivator's cultivation. Qin Wentian naturally understood what choice he should make. The pressure on his perception grew stronger and stronger. Qin Wentian was still attempting to ascend upwards. Every time a constellation appeared in his vision, it would be so powerful that it caused Qin Wentian's heart to palpitate. However, he endured it all. His perception was on the verge of collapsing. If he failed this time around, he could only wait for the next chance to ascend to the 9 heavenly layers. However, he still didn't give up. In a place extremely far away from him, a beam of dazzling astral light cascaded downwards. Faintly, a terrifying might permeated the air, causing Qin Wentian's perception to grow even more illusory. However, at this moment, the illusory figure formed from his perception was actually staring in a certain direction. Boundless astral light cascaded down onto the illusory perception. That was a heaven-suppressing silhouette that stood towering in the skies. This constellation actually faintly interweaved into the shape of a human, standing in the air, suppressing the heavens. Every part of its body flickered with a dazzling runic light, as though it was fluttering unceasingly, exuding an extremely terrifying aura. The surroundings of this human-shaped constellation were boundlessly vast, as though it didn't permit the existence of others of the same kind. Just by being there, it would be an existence that could suppress the starry space. Heaven-suppressing Fiend God art, suppression, Fiend God body refinement, supremely strong physique. This constellation should be suitable for me. Qin Wentian forcibly suppressed the urge to disperse his perception as he drifted towards the constellation. The closer he got, the stronger the suppression energy radiating from the constellation. This continued until Qin Wentian's perception also sensed a similar aura. At this instant, his perception directly vanished from its original location, traversing a boundless distance, directly landing on the constellation. At this instant, in the 7th heavenly layer of the 9 heavenly layers, numerous beams of astral light traversed a boundless distance, cascading downwards onto the silhouette in the royal palace of Grand Xia. That silhouette trembled violently, but he still maintained his clarity of mind, borrowing the astral light to condense his astral soul. Something major happened in the royal sacred region. This matter was caused by a piece of news. This news soon shocked the entire world, causing a huge commotion in the royal sacred region. This news originated from the hegemon of the royal sacred region, the Royal Sacred Sect. The Royal Sacred Sect announced to the world that Qin Wentian had repeatedly offended their prestige. Hence, the Royal Sacred Sect decided to issue a kill order, wanting to kill Qin Wentian. As a character of the Royal Sacred Region, the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, the Royal Sacred Sect actually issued a kill order against him. One could very well imagine how intense the commotion would be. That was the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Region, the Royal Sacred Sect. They actually issued a kill order against a junior of the younger generation? This was simply an unimaginable matter. In these tens of thousands of years, only Qin Wentian had enjoyed such treatment. Finally, the Royal Sacred Sect still wants to act against Qin Wentian. Back then when Qin died, Qin Wentian had already formed a grudge with the Royal Sacred Sect. That fellow is truly arrogant and powerful enough, causing the royal sacred sect to go to war for him. However, if the hegemon of the world wants to kill him, how can Qin Wentian survive? Many mused in their hearts. Most probably, this era-suppressing genius of the royal sacred region was about to fall. This time around, the royal sacred sect had truly made up their minds. They announced to the world that if there was a young man below 100 years of age who could kill Qin Wentian, he or she would be able to directly enter the royal sacred sect and become a disciple of the core faction. As for the others who managed to kill Qin Wentian, they would also be rewarded with a peak-tier celestial phenomenon cultivation art and a high-grade 5th-ranked divine weapon. At the same time, the royal sacred sect also announced the location of Qin Wentian's current location. Qin Wentian was currently residing in Grand Xia, the desolate land of the royal sacred region. How could such news not cause shock and frenzy? Naturally, there were also people who speculated. Since the royal sacred sect knew the location of Qin Wentian, why didn't they directly kill their way over to kill Qin Wentian, but chose to announce this to the world instead? What was the royal sacred sect doing this for? The royal sacred sect's decision to kill Qin Wentian was a command given by the sacred emperor himself. Now that they knew the medicine sovereign had broken through to the sacred emperor realm, they knew that there was another layer of meaning behind their decision to kill Qin Wentian. They wanted to see the medicine sovereign's determination when facing the sacred emperor, and see if he would still disobey the sacred emperor's order and protect Qin Wentian. They wanted to tell the world who the hegemon of this region was. They wanted to see the attitude of the medicine sovereign. What would he do? If the medicine sovereign really wanted to protect Qin Wentian, it was fine as well. The sacred emperor was their backing, and rather than suffering the revenge of the medicine sovereign after killing Qin Wentian, they would rather choose to see the medicine sovereign's attitude and determination first. By doing so, they could reduce unnecessary losses. A terrifying tempest was currently gushing towards Grand Xia from the royal sacred region. Many experts of the royal sacred region were heading towards Grand Xia, preparing to kill Qin Wentian. And among these powers heading to Grand Xia, the Grand Shang Empire, the Violet Thunder Sect and the D Clan were the most active. Undoubtedly, they were the ones who wanted Qin Wentian's life the most. Those from the Battle Sword Sect were all worried for Qin Wentian. In fact, when the Emperor of Yi Qingyun received the order to kill Qin Wentian, he immediately headed towards Grand Xia. Qin Wentian of Grand Xia was immersed in his cultivation until one day, he received a letter from the Royal Sacred Region. This letter was written by the Chief Hall Lord of the Star River Association, and the contents of the letter caused Qin Wentian to feel fear in his heart. He had already guessed that the power of the Star River Association wasn't limited to Grand Xia. However, he didn't expect that the power of the Star River Association didn't only originate from the Royal Sacred Region. Its history was even longer compared to the Royal Sacred Sect. Not only that, it originated from outside the Royal Sacred Region. The Star River Association in the Royal Sacred Region was merely the tip of the iceberg. The content of the letter was to invite him to join the Star River Association. As long as he nodded his head in agreement, the Star River Association would be willing to send him out of the Royal Sacred Region and nurture him in the outside world. If that was the case, they would naturally let bygones be bygones. But if he wasn't willing to accept, he would have to make a public apology and release the restrictions placed on the Star River Association in Grand Xia. However, regardless of which condition it was, Qin Wentian wasn't willing to accept it. He also replied with a simple sentence: "This matter ends here." He would expel the Star River Association from Grand Xia and forget about this matter. All grudges of the past would be written off with a single stroke. However, Qin Wentian felt that the other party most probably wouldn't accept it. Not long after the letter was sent out, the Battle Sword Sect sent news to the world. The Royal Sacred Sect had issued a kill order, wanting to kill Qin Wentian. After which, Yi Qingyun arrived at Grand Xia. In the royal palace, Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyun were strolling on the stone steps when Yi Qingyun spoke. "Wentian, it's better for you to leave the Royal Sacred Region." This time around, the Royal Sacred Sect came with such a domineering aura. "They're determined to kill you. I can contact the immortal martial realm, and as long as you agree, I can get the invoice to send you out. Qin Wentian's eyes stared straight ahead. He didn't reply immediately. Leaving the royal sacred region was something that would happen sooner or later. He wanted to pursue the strongest cultivation realm and pursue his origins. He had to leave this place no matter what. But was he really going to abandon everything and flee with his tail between his legs? The royal sacred sect has finally issued a kill order for me. Seems like the sacred emperor has already agreed to it. Qin Wentian mumbled. Back then at his wedding in Chu, the experts from the royal sacred sect had all been killed. The royal sacred sect would definitely report this matter to the royal sacred sect. If they wanted to kill him again, they would have to obtain the approval of the sacred emperor first. Chapter 695. The medicine sovereign had already broken through to the sacred emperor realm. In the past, only a few people knew of this news, and the sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect was one of them. Now that he informed the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect, those people naturally knew of this as well. However, Yi Qingyan and Qin Wentian didn't know of this. The experts of the royal sacred region also didn't know of this. There were some among them who wanted to kill Qin Wentian to obtain the rewards of the royal sacred sect, while those younger than 100 years old wanted to kill Qin Wentian to become a disciple of the core faction of the royal sacred sect. Qin Wentian had become a stepping stone in the eyes of many. As long as they could kill him, they would at least be able to obtain bountiful rewards. The experts of Grand Shang, Violet Thunder Sect, and the Dishir clan of the royal sacred region had already arrived in an imposing manner, killing their way to Grand Xia. In fact, they didn't even need the royal sacred sect to act personally. They only needed to watch from the shadows, and with a single command, Qin Wentian would die for sure. In the Ginku Empire of Grand Xia, the blazing sun hung high up in the sky as flowers bloomed within the city. Ever since Qin Wentian unified Grand Xia, Ginku was equivalent to the capital city of Grand Xia. There were many geniuses who came to Ginku, wanting to admire the glory of Grand Xia. Outside the majestic imperial palace of Grand Xia, there would be many experts standing there every day. Standing outside the imperial palace, it was as though they could feel the glorious history that Qin Wentian had created. This period of history would definitely leave a heavy mark on Grand Xia. However, at this moment, the sounds of wind and thunder could be heard drifting over from the horizon. The expressions of everyone were strange as they inclined their heads and stared at the sky. The sunlight was so blinding that their hearts trembled violently, only to see that in the air, a golden armored warship actually appeared, radiating with a terrifying golden light. On the warship, several experts stood with their hands clasped behind their backs. The sunlight shone down on them, exuding an unexcelled aura, as though they were all supremely powerful existences. Who are they? The hearts of the spectators pounded violently. That golden armored warship hovered in the airspace above Grand Xia, emitting a resplendent golden light that rivaled the blazing sun. Numerous beams of cold light pierced through the air, staring down from the warship, after which numerous silhouettes could be seen flying over. On the gigantic warship, there were over 100 experts, and each and every one of them exuded a supremely powerful aura. Why have you all come to my Grand Xia Empire? A voice rang out from the great hall of Grand Xia, permeating the air, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Was this the voice of the Emperor of Grand Xia, Qin Wentian? The warriors on the golden armored warship lined up in a row, seeming to be divided into different camps. They didn't just come from one force, but from many forces. However, they all had the same goal: to kill Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian, you should be very clear as to why we are here. Today, Grand Xia shall be the place where your bones will be buried. A cold voice rang out, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. These unexcelled experts were all here for the sake of killing the Emperor of Grand Xia, Qin Wentian. In the royal palace of Grand Xia, numerous figures soared up into the air, standing at the peak of the royal palace. One of them was clad in white, exuding magnificence through the generations. His eyes were filled with coldness as he coldly spoke. I heard the royal sacred sect has given the order. Killing me will allow you to obtain treasures, and there's even a chance to become a core disciple of the royal sacred sect. All of you are willing to be my lackeys, But I wonder if you can take my life. These people came here on the golden armored warship with the sole purpose of taking his life. There was no need for Qin Wentian to be courteous at all. Someone who's about to die actually dares to spout such arrogant words? An expert from the Violet Thunder sect shone with the power of lightning as he descended from the skies, exuding a sense of imposingness. Everyone, you are all famous characters, yet you all came here in such a grandiose manner just to deal with a junior. I wonder if you all feel shame? Yi Qingyun stood beside Qin Wentian as he inclined his head and stared at the experts in the air. Yi Qingyun, although you are the human emperor of an ancient country, how can you be compared to my Grand Zhou Empire? My Grand Zhou Empire wants to kill Qin Wentian, yet you want to interfere? Aren't you afraid that your country will be destroyed? An old man from Grand Zhou Empire had a sharp gaze as he stared at Yi Qingyun. Yi Qingyun's countenance didn't change. His long robes fluttered in the wind as he emotionlessly replied, I, Yi Qingyun, have lived for hundreds of years. What I fear the least is threats. Cultivation has no boundaries. If you threaten the people of your country, I'm afraid your Grand Shang Empire will never have a day of peace. If you kill my royal clan, if I, Yi Qingyun, don't die, I will definitely destroy your Grand Shang Empire. In that case, I will kill you first before I destroy your royal clan. That expert coldly spoke. Is that so? I, Yi Qingyun, will remember this sentence. Yi Qingyun stood arrogantly in the air, exuding the might of the human emperor of an ancient country. Those from Grand Shang, the Violet Thunder sect, the Dishir clan and the Royal Sacred sect should be here as well. Qin Wentian surveyed the experts in the air as his gaze landed on a young man with an extremely cold expression. This man was extremely famous in the Royal Sacred region. He was none other than one of the era-suppressing geniuses of the past, Qi Lian, a disciple of the Blood Devil Palace and a member of the Qi clan of the Western regions. Qin Wentian's gaze paused on Qi Lian for an instant as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Beside Qi Lian, there were quite a few young experts. One of them had blood-colored eyes that radiated killing intent. He was none other than Qi Lian's brother, Qi Tai from the Qi clan of the Western regions. He was also a disciple of the Blood Devil Palace, and was also a disciple of the Blood Devil Palace. His talent was inferior to Qi Lian, but because Qi Lian was over 20 years of age, his cultivation base was stronger. Right now, he was already at the second level of celestial phenomenon, and was still within 100 years of age. Qi Tai stepped out and spoke to everyone. Everyone, please allow me to fight first. As he spoke, he stared at Qin Wentian. My name is Qi Tai and I'm at the celestial phenomenon realm. I really don't understand why the Royal Sacred Sect would make such a big fuss. Qin Wentian, do you dare to fight me? Qin Wentian swept a glance at his opponent, instantly knowing his cultivation base. He still stood at his original location, as though he didn't care about his opponent's existence at all. Fine, since you want to be a lackey, I will grant you your wish. Qin Wentian nodded as he stared at him. Behind Qi Tai, his astral soul was released as a resplendent constellation manifested. The terrifying constellation was the color of blood, exuding a towering devil might. Numerous terrifying ancient halberds manifested within the constellation, exuding an incomparably powerful killing intent. Busy. The constellation flashed past, blotting out the sun. Sunlight couldn't shine down and Qin Wentian felt as though he was in a space of purgatory. Kill. Qi Tai coldly snorted. In an instant, tens of thousands of blood-colored halberds manifested from his constellation as they rained down, stirring up a tempest in the air as rumbling sounds echoed. Blood-colored light circulated around them, containing an unfathomable destructive might. Qin Wentian lifted his foot and stomped down in the air. A rumbling sound echoed out as a terrifying suppressive might gushed forth, causing the might of the ancient halberds to weaken by several degrees. Golden light flashed as a pair of golden rock wings appeared on Qin Wentian's back. With a flap of his wings, he resembled a great rock soaring through the skies, moving as fast as lightning. Resplendent astral light shimmered on his golden wings, slicing apart the ancient halberds as though he was a primordial golden-winged great rock. Boom! Devil Qi churned wildly around Qi Tai. With his constellation on his back, he seemed to have transformed into a devil king. Pointing at the incoming Qin Wentian, he stabbed out with his halberd, refining the void with his blood. Boundless blood-colored halberd slashed out, aiming for Qin Wentian's golden light. In the center of Qin Wentian's brows, a pair of demonic eyes blinked. Instantly, Qi Tai only felt the sky changing color. In just an instant, everything seemed to slow down. Qin Wentian's movements didn't slow down at all. His resplendent wings circulated with a fearsome demonic might, stretching out over 10,000 meters as a resplendent light illuminated the skies, slashing apart the devil halberds and slicing apart Qi Tai's body. The crowd only saw a beam of blood splattering out as the golden rock flickered and returned to his original location. The crowd only saw a bloody wound in the center of Qi Tai's brows, extending downwards as blood gushed out, after which he fell from the air. How powerful! The energy emanating from those wings is truly terrifying. The spectators all stared at Qin Wentian. He didn't even release his constellation, and was able to kill Qi Tai. This heaven chosen of the royal sacred region must have already stepped into the celestial phenomenon realm. Qi Tai's countenance was incredibly unsightly to behold. When he first rose to fame, Qin Wentian was still a nameless character. But now, Qin Wentian had already broken through to celestial phenomenon, gradually pulling away the distance between them, and even killing Qi Tai in such a domineering manner. An era-suppressing heaven chosen? It was as though he only existed to serve as a foil to Qin Wentian. Becoming a core disciple of the royal sacred sect by killing me? Qin Wentian stared at the spectators in the air, as his golden wings shimmered with a resplendent light. He then spoke, "You guys are really thinking too much. Just a power like the royal sacred sect. Even if you send their core disciples over to kill me, I would still do the same. If it wasn't for the protection of the royal sacred sect back then, Saiqiu would have already died in my hands, just like Xiaosheng. They should already be considered the most outstanding heavenly dipper sovereigns of the royal sacred sect. How pitiful." A stifling pressure gushed forth. The eyes of the expert controlling the golden battleship flashed with a towering killing intent as he coldly commanded, "Kill him. Whoever dares to act, kill without mercy." Yi Qingyan coldly spoke. "Don't be a scapegoat. These people who came here today are still insufficient." As the sound of Yi Qingyan's voice faded, the silhouettes of several experts appeared. A terrifying army of celestial phenomenon ascendants soared up into the air, and at the same time, several maidens dressed in the same robes appeared. These were none other than the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Those who wish to kill Qin Wentian are enemies with the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Kill them all. One of the maidens from the Medicine Sovereign Valley coldly commanded. The auras of both parties gushed forth, congregating in the air as a chaotic current of energy echoed out, emitting an ear-piercing screech. Are the Medicine Sovereign Valley and Yi Qingyan determined to obstruct our royal sacred sect's plans? That expert on the golden battleship coldly spoke. The reason they came here today was merely to probe the strength of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. If the Medicine Sovereign Valley retreated, they would directly kill Qin Wentian. But from the looks of it now, the attitude of the Medicine Sovereign Valley was extremely unyielding, wanting to protect Qin Wentian no matter what. What they didn't expect was that the human emperor of Yi Qingyan actually dared to participate in this matter. How impudent! This was a direct provocation to their position as the hegemon of the royal sacred sect. Chapter 696. Yi Qingyan's gaze turned to the air, staring straight at the expert on the golden-armored warship. Qin Wentian was his foster son, and the reason why they were connected by fate was because Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing had saved his life. If it wasn't for Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing's father, he would have already died and the Yi country would have long fallen into the hands of bandits. A man could clearly distinguish between gratitude and grudges. If there was enmity, there would be revenge, and if there was kindness, there would be kindness. In addition, he admired Qin Wentian very much. This foster son of his would definitely become an outstanding character in the future. A demon-level character that would dominate the entire royal sacred region. His future would definitely be even further away. How could Yi Qingyan allow the royal sacred sect to kill Qin Wentian? He, Yi Qingyan, was willing to protect Qin Wentian, regardless of the price. Hence, a resolute light could be seen in Yi Qingyun's eyes. He then spoke, "Yes, if we want to kill Qin Wentian, even if the royal sacred sect is the hegemon of an entire region, they would have to step over my body first." The experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley didn't say anything. They continued standing in the air, but the resolute look in their eyes had already given them their answer. Fine. On the golden armored warship, that expert stared down at the experts below as he coldly spoke. "In this world, is there any place that belongs to my royal sacred sect? I really want to see how strong your determination is." As the sound of his voice faded, everyone could feel the sharpness in the voice of the expert on the golden armored warship. Everything under the heavens belonged to the royal sacred sect? They were simply too arrogant. It was as though everything under the heavens belonged to their royal sacred sect. The royal sacred sect was the hegemon of the royal sacred region, ruling over everything under the heavens. But when the words spoken by the expert from the royal sacred sect sounded so tyrannical that it could swallow mountains and rivers, it caused Qin Wentian and the others to feel a chill in their hearts. Everything under the heavens belonged to the royal sacred sect. Did this mean that whoever they wanted to die would die? Right now, the royal sacred sect wanted Qin Wentian to die. They wanted to see how strong the determination of the Medicine Sovereign Valley and Yi Qingyun was. An incomparably intense killing intent flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. This sentence of Qin Wentian caused his impression of the royal sacred sect to worsen to the extreme. The royal sacred sect was the hegemon of the world. They were the strongest. Could they decide the fate of everyone in the world? Everything under the heavens belonged to the royal sacred sect. This sentence exposed the coldness and arrogance of the royal sacred sect. Indeed, the number of people we gathered here today isn't sufficient to kill Qin Wentian. However, my royal sacred sect wants to see, if we want Qin Wentian to die, who would dare to obstruct us? On the golden armored warship, the expert's voice was still as cold as ice. He said, "Qin Wentian, Yi Qingyun, listen up." Yi Qingyun and Qin Wentian inclined their heads, coldly staring at the figure in the air. "Within 7 days, come to the sacred royal city to receive your death. If you don't come, my royal sacred sect dares to make Yi and Grand Xia vanish from the face of the royal sacred region." The expert on the golden armored warship exuded a boundless coldness. This voice of his was so cold that it seeped into Qin Wentian's bones and soul. "Within 7 days, come to the sacred royal city to receive your death. If not, I will make Yi and Grand Xia vanish from the face of the royal sacred region." The words spoken by the royal sacred sect were filled with boundless cold-bloodedness and tyranny. They could indeed accomplish this. As long as the royal sacred sect gave the command, the strongest power in Grand Xia would be easily raised to flat ground. The 9 continents of Grand Xia would be turned into ruins, and Grand Xia would never be able to recover from this setback. In fact, Grand Xia might even be erased from the royal sacred region. This was the first time Qin Wentian truly experienced the coldness and arrogance of a hegemon. Everyone also truly understood the determination of the royal sacred sect to kill Qin Wentian. Back then, Qin Wentian entered the royal sacred sect, killing Xiaosheng and leaving with his life. It wasn't because Qin Wentian was strong, it was because the sacred emperor didn't have the intention to kill Qin Wentian. But this time was different. Everyone in the royal sacred sect wanted Qin Wentian to die. The prestige of a hegemon cannot be blasphemed. Today a Qin Wentian appeared. If Qin Wentian descended, there would be a second one. Only the fresh blood of Qin Wentian would be engraved in the minds of the people of the royal sacred region. Remember the meaning of the 4 words royal sacred sect. Remember the prestige of a hegemon. No one can ever blaspheme against them. Those who offend them shall die. As the sound of his voice faded, the golden armored warship glowed with resplendent light. The expert had his hands clasped behind his back as he spoke to everyone. "Return." "Roger." Everyone nodded as they boarded the golden armored warship. Cold gazes swept over to Qin Wentian, staring at Qin Wentian, as though they were looking at a dead man. Seems like this time around, they came to the royal sacred sect only to probe the Medicine Sovereign Valley's determination. If they could kill them, they would. But since the Medicine Sovereign Valley wanted to protect Qin Wentian no matter what, the Royal Sacred Sect would also show the Medicine Sovereign Valley their determination. 7 days later, Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyun would go to the Royal Sacred Sect to await their deaths. These words were only meant for Yi Qingyun and Qin Wentian, but wasn't it also meant for the Medicine Sovereign as well? The golden armored warship turned and soared through the air, exuding a tyrannical aura as it left. It left behind an incomparably tyrannical sentence, telling Qin Wentian and the human emperor of Yi to go to the Royal Sacred Sect to await their deaths. In the surroundings of the Royal Sacred Sect, the spectators were all dumbstruck. Qin Wentian seemed to have offended an inconceivably powerful existence, telling Qin Wentian to go to the Royal Sacred Sect to await his death. If not, they would annihilate Grand Xia. The bodies of many trembled as they stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian and the rest were all filled with towering rage as they stared at the departing silhouettes, telling them to go to the Royal Sacred Sect, the hegemon of this world. How awe-inspiring! The Royal Sacred Sect was the hegemon of this world. How awe-inspiring! The sun continued to cascade down from the sky, bringing with it a blazing heat. However, many people felt a chill, including Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyun. It wasn't because of fear, but rather, it was because of the coldness and anger in their hearts. His long robes fluttered in the wind. Qin Wentian didn't speak for a long time. He only stood there, staring at the departing golden armored warship. After a long period of silence, he turned his gaze onto the Royal Sacred Sect below, before casting a glance at the people of Grand Xia. Drawing in a deep breath, there were no more worries in his heart. From today onwards, Fairy Qingmei shall replace me as the ruler of Grand Xia. I shall do this for the sake of reviving Grand Xia. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, he slowly descended the warship, moving towards the Royal Sacred Sect. An instant later, he brought a group of silhouettes and soared through the air, leaving behind the silhouettes of his silhouette that exuded magnificence throughout the generations. Staring at that silhouette, it was filled with an indomitable will, as though he would never return, as well as a stubborn determination to ascend to the peak of Grand Xia. Many years later, there would still be people who wouldn't be able to forget this silhouette. Not long after Qin Wentian became the emperor of Grand Xia, he brought his lofty ambitions and left the Royal Sacred Sect, saving Grand Xia from calamity. After Qin Wentian left, numerous silhouettes soared up into the air. These were all the ascendants of Grand Xia, including Fairy Qingmei, Old Xing, Luo Huan and the rest. They stared at the departing silhouette, as tears could be seen in the eyes of many. When would they be able to witness his magnificence again? Chapter 697. The Royal Sacred Region was boundlessly vast, and the Sacred Royal City was the most flourishing. After Qin Wentian obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, his fame shook the world on the sacred battle platform, slaying Di Shi and defeating an era-suppressing genius. His potential and combat prowess had proven that he was above all era-suppressing geniuses, and he was faintly the #1 genius among the younger generations in the Royal Sacred Region. He had even killed Xia Sheng in the Royal Sacred Sect, taking revenge for Qin. The Medicine Sovereign, the immortal martial realm as well as Yi Qingyun protected him, escorting him out of the Royal Sacred Sect safely. But it was precisely this supreme heaven chosen that was now wanted by the Royal Sacred Sect. The hegemon of the world wanted his life. And just a few days ago, news circulated out that Qin Wentian was coming to the Sacred Royal City to await his death. Not only for Qin Wentian, even the human emperor of Yi, Yi Qingyun, who was protecting Qin Wentian, would also be punished by the Royal Sacred Sect. And at this moment, Qin Wentian had already arrived in the Sacred Royal City. However, he didn't reveal himself and chose to remain in the most flourishing trading ground in the Sacred Royal City, silently trading for the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, keeping a low profile. After obtaining the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, he would find a place to cultivate in silence, as though he didn't care about the commotion in the outside world. However, even though Qin Wentian didn't care, there were others who were anxious. Mo Qingqing was currently gathering the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, preparing to head to the Sacred Royal City. She didn't expect Qin Wentian to be so audacious, directly entering the sacred royal city. After all, the royal sacred sect was the hegemon of the world. Now that they had steeled their hearts to kill Qin Wentian, there would surely be a terrifying storm of commotion. Other than Mo Qingqing, there was one more person who had never left Qin Wentian's line of sight, even though it had been a very long time since she appeared in front of him. In the sacred royal city, the royal sacred sect stood there, exuding a majestic aura, the hegemon of the world. In the air outside the royal sacred sect, the silhouette of a female could be seen. The eyes of this female flickered with a boundless coldness as killing intent flashed within. Princess, His Majesty sent another message. We really should go now. Behind Qing'er, the old man had been following her. He wanted to take her away, but Qing'er refused, so there was nothing he could do. After His Majesty ascended to the throne, he had always felt guilty towards the princess and doted on her. He even went to the extent of obtaining the great Nirvana immortal art for one of her requests. Such boldness and determination made his heart tremble. If he were to forcefully take Qing'er away, he wouldn't dare to do so. If he angered the princess, and she was unhappy in the future, then the result would be. And so, as a great general of the immortal nation, he could only run errands for the princess. Furthermore, he couldn't afford to make her unhappy. How pitiful. Can you help me destroy the royal sacred sect? Qing'er spoke in a cold voice. The countenance of the old man didn't fluctuate at all. It was as though destroying the royal sacred sect was as easy as lifting a finger. A mere hegemon of a world region, in his eyes, didn't amount to anything at all. Most probably, the amount of time he had lived was even longer compared to the history of the royal sacred sect. Princess, what can you do after destroying the royal sacred sect? The old man asked. On the path of pursuing the path of absolute experts, he would definitely encounter many powerful opponents. If he can't surpass them, he can only stagnate at a certain level or die. Even if I help him to destroy the royal sacred sect, there would still be another one. Don't tell me Princess wants to protect him forever? The old man was helpless. If he destroyed the royal sacred sect, would the princess leave with him? Seeing how much the princess cared for that young man, she most probably wouldn't be willing to leave. Do you have any good ideas? Qing'er's voice rang out. Her cold eyes stared at the old man as a hint of hope could be seen flickering in her eyes. The old man sighed in his heart when he saw the look in Qing'er's eyes. Seems like Princess Qing'er's love was too deep, there was no cure for it. However, Princess Qing'er had a request for him. If he could help Princess Qing'er settle this matter, Princess Qing'er would definitely remember him, right? Unless he has the protection of an expert. It would be best if a supreme existence accepted him as a disciple and brought him out of the royal sacred region. If that's the case, he would have an easier time, and in the future, he would still have the chance to meet with Princess again. The old man slowly spoke, his words causing a bright light to flash in Qing'er's eyes. But I don't know any supreme existences. Qing'er frowned, feeling somewhat vexed. She hoped that if there was someone who accepted Qin Wentian as a disciple, it would be best if it was one of those supreme existences. This way, Qin Wentian's future would be smoother, and there would be no need for her to protect him. The eyes of the old man flickered. If Princess requests it, this old slave is willing to pass on your words. His Majesty does have many good friends, but this old slave would like to remind you that supreme existences on the same level as His Majesty wouldn't casually accept disciples. Even if it was for the sake of His Majesty's face, it would only be a decoration and wouldn't protect the disciple. Everything still depends on the talent of the disciple. His talent would definitely not be a problem. Qing'er's eyes brightened as she stared at the old man. In that case, help me pass on my words. Princess. The old man stared at Qing'er as he called out. Qing'er asked, is there anything else? Princess, if this time around, if His Majesty agrees, Princess has no choice but to leave with this old slave. The old man sincerely stated. Qing'er's beautiful eyes froze for a moment before she turned her gaze to the horizons. There was a hint of reluctance in her eyes as a rare smile appeared on her face. All right then. Staring at the back view of Qing'er, the old man shook his head and sighed. He really didn't know what the princess was thinking. She had already witnessed his grand wedding, yet she was still so stubborn. Even if the princess didn't mind, could it be that His Majesty would allow his beloved daughter to share a man with others? No matter how outstanding that young man was, His Majesty wouldn't allow the princess to suffer such grievances, right? What an ill-fated relationship. The old man could only sigh silently. Back then, His Majesty must have made a mistake by sending the princess to such a remote region. The hegemon of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect, was still standing there. They were incomparably arrogant, and not long ago, they once said that everything under the heavens belonged to them. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that not long ago, the beauty who once threatened them would almost cause their entire sect to be annihilated with a single thought. If it wasn't for the fact that the old man thought of another method, or if it wasn't for the fact that Qing didn't agree, the royal sacred sect would have already been erased from the royal sacred region. However, the royal sacred sect naturally wouldn't know of this matter. They were still waiting for Qin Wentian to come to the sacred royal city to receive his death. Qin Wentian naturally didn't know about this. That Snow Lotus Maiden had always been someone who didn't like to speak. But even so, she was still the same as before, silently protecting Qin Wentian from the shadows. Once, for the sake of obtaining the great nirvana immortal art for Qin Wentian, she caused a huge commotion in the outside world. Once, she personally came to the royal sacred sect and threatened the hegemon of an era. Now she was still silently worrying for him, protecting him. But all of these, Qin Wentian had no way of knowing. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged in an inn and cultivating. Dazzling runes of light flowed around his body. The runes of light flowed on the surface of his body and emitted a mysterious aura, as if they could condense into special runes. Stretching his palms towards the ground, crackling sounds rang out as the powder of the sky demon oracle bone was absorbed into his body. After which, it flowed through his arterial pathways into his body, completing the tempering process. After which, it transformed into runic lights that circulated around his body, repeating the process over and over again, causing his body to grow stronger and stronger. Even the flowing runic inscriptions gave off a sense of power. After a long time, he drew in a deep breath as the light circulating around his body faded away. He opened his eyes and stared at the sky demon oracle bone powder that had been cleanly absorbed by him. Right now, the amount of sky demon oracle bone powder I can collect is simply too little. Also, if I want to condense my fiend god physique, I would need the help of a true sky demon oracle bone. I'm afraid I won't be able to find one in the royal sacred region. Qin Wentian silently mused. The transaction ground in the sacred royal city was already the strongest in the royal sacred region, yet he still couldn't find a sky demon oracle bone. Most probably, it would be extremely difficult to find one in the entire royal sacred region. After pondering for a moment, Qin Wentian felt somewhat sullen. So what if he had talent? Without strength, he would still be a plaything in the hands of others. Although he could jump levels and kill third-level ascendants now, his foundation was still too shallow. His cultivation base wasn't high enough, and in front of a hegemon like the royal sacred sect, he was still extremely weak. At this moment, Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with sharpness. With a wave of his hands, a boundless amount of Yuan meteor stones piled up beside Qin Wentian. These were all the Yuan meteor stones Qin Wentian had. All of them were gathered here. Father, the you back then could cause immortals and devils to cry. But now your child is actually feeling so sullen because of a mere royal sacred sect. I've truly weakened your prestige. With an intention of his will, Qin Wentian caused the Yuan meteor stones to float in the air, floating in different directions as they transformed into an incomparably gigantic divine inscription diagram. Let me take a look at the memories you left behind. Qin Wentian slammed his palms together, and instantly, the entire diagram lit up, transforming into boundless astral light that enveloped his body. That incomparably resplendent astral light frenziedly drilled into Qin Wentian's body. The rate at which the Yuan meteor stones were being consumed had reached an unheard of level. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and guarded his consciousness, allowing the astral energy to rush into the tiny astral being in his sea of consciousness. Instantly, the tiny astral being shone with a resplendent light. The terrifying astral light directly brought Qin Wentian's consciousness into that boundlessly vast space, unceasingly entering the depths of the starry skies, searching for the memories his father left behind for him. The astral light shone resplendently. Qin Wentian's perception broke through unceasingly, frenziedly rushing towards an astral crystal. That should also be the core memories his father left behind for him. The amount of Yuan meteor stones in the external world was being depleted at an alarming rate. That astral crystal grew brighter and brighter, and finally, with a burst of intense light, Qin Wentian's perception was instantly dragged into another dimension. In this dimension, there was an imposing figure standing in the air. His mouth was currently chanting a series of complicated incantations, and every syllable of the incantation transformed into a terrifying runic light. That imposing figure shone with boundless immortal light, as though it was from the supreme primordial era, illuminating the entire space. Chapter 698. This imposing figure was none other than Qin Wentian's biological father. The immortal palace enveloped his body, illuminating the skies. On his body, every inch of his body was shimmering with a dazzling runic light. Bathed in the holy light, this imposing figure seemed even more extraordinary, akin to a heavenly deity descending to the mortal world, giving off an intense visual impact. The oracular chant continued unceasingly. The radiance of that figure towered up into the skies. This halo of light was akin to flames, yet also akin to true light. Amidst the pure white luster, a hint of gold could be seen flickering within, adding to the aura of a king. Rumble. Qin Wentian's consciousness trembled violently, as though it would collapse at any moment. That bitter oracular chant was akin to celestial music, directly gushing into his mind. When the figure in front of him turned around, Qin Wentian finally saw the face of that figure clearly. The owner of that face had a smile on his face, causing Qin Wentian's heart to tremble violently. That smile was gentle and warm, as though it was looking at him, smiling at him. Father. Qin Wentian's consciousness was directly jolted out, as his mind trembled violently. When he opened his eyes, Qin Wentian's eyes were slightly red, as a portion of the oracular chant appeared in his mind, as well as that gentle smile. It was as though his father had seen him, and was smiling at him. Qin Wentian also smiled. His smile was a little silly, but he was truly happy. Looking at that smile, this was the first time he truly felt that his father was by his side. His father had never left him, and had always been silently protecting him. This oracular chant. Qin Wentian mumbled, glancing at the vanishing Yuan meteor stones as he sighed in his heart. Wanting to obtain a strand of his father's memories was truly too difficult. Closing his eyes, Qin Wentian started to chant in a low voice, as a series of obscure oracular chant flowed out from his mouth. However, there was no other reaction. Qin Wentian unceasingly tried, again and again, gradually becoming more and more proficient with the oracular chant. His heart moved according to the oracular chant, and a surge of energy involuntarily circulated within his body, as though it was resonating with the oracular chant. At that moment, Qin Wentian noticed that the heart fire in his body seemed to tremble. This is the bloodline mantra? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. The incantation in his memory was obscure and hard to understand, like the sound of heaven, but he seemed to be born with the ability to chant. As he became more familiar with the incantation, he could vaguely understand its meaning. Now he even triggered the rarely moving white light. In the past, Qin Wentian had always thought that the flame of the heart could be his second bloodline. This bloodline had saved his life twice in the past. It could protect his heart meridian, and make him immune to all kinds of poisons. However, he had never been able to activate the power of this bloodline. Until now, this mnemonic chant seemed to have caused the flame of the heart to throb. Qin Wentian was immersed in it, chanting the incantation continuously. The heart fire in his body was beating slowly. It was very slow, but Qin Wentian could clearly feel its activity, as though it was recovering. It seems like this is really the mnemonic chant to activate the power of the bloodline. Qin Wentian thought in his heart. Without any distractions, He immersed himself in chanting the mnemonic chant again and again. After tens of thousands of times, the true meaning of the incantation was revealed. One day later, Qin Wentian was still chanting the incantation. At this moment, there was a resplendent brilliance on his body, like immortal light, illuminating his entire body. The brilliance was like wisps of candlelight. Each wisp of candlelight was like a terrifying rune, possessing a terrifying might. They enveloped Qin Wentian's body. As Qin Wentian chanted, the runes became more and more resplendent. The immortal light formed by the countless runes and candlelight was like a phenomenon of heaven and earth. At this moment, Qin Wentian was like an immortal king. Qin Wentian's body and blood seemed to be resonating with the mnemonic chant he was chanting. At this instant, Qin Wentian had a feeling that immortal light was protecting his body, impervious to all evils and poisons. Exhaling a long breath, Qin Wentian opened his eyes. A resplendent beam of immortal light shot out, shooting towards the horizons, resembling a terrifying flame. Why is the power of this bloodline so unique? Qin Wentian mused. Just like what he had guessed in the past, this candlelight was indeed the power of his bloodline. However, it was an extremely unique bloodline that had the power to purify all evils, as well as a terrifying destructive might that could incinerate everything. Based on his feeling, if he unleashed his full strength, even third-level ascendants would die without a doubt if they were to be incinerated by this candlelight. But even so, his strength was still far from enough. His cultivation base was too low, only at the first level of celestial phenomenon. Although he had many trump cards, his constellation was strong, and he also had two powerful bloodlines, which ensured that he would be unrivaled among those at the same level. Even if he was 1 or 2 levels higher than him, what about 4th level and 5th level ascendants? What about those even stronger? The Royal Sacred Sect should have plenty of peak-level celestial phenomenon ascendants. But even so, since the Royal Sacred Sect wanted to kill him, and even threatened Yi and Grand Xia, he had to teach them an unforgettable lesson no matter what. He had to make them understand that even if the Royal Sacred Sect was the hegemon of an entire region, disregarding the lives of the people in the world, there would be a day when the Royal Sacred Sect would be expelled or even destroyed. Today was the 6th day of the 7-day deadline given by the Royal Sacred Sect. The people of the Sacred Royal City were all paying attention to whether Qin Wentian would appear in the Sacred Royal City, or head to the Royal Sacred Sect to receive his death sentence. The Sacred Battle platform in the Sacred Royal City was extremely quiet today. After all, if one wanted to activate the Sacred Battle platform, they would have to fight against the famous Heaven Chosen of the Royal Sacred Region. Every time the Sacred Battle platform was opened, the winner would always be a famous character of the Royal Sacred Region. The Sacred Battle platform was also controlled by experts from the Royal Sacred Sect. At this moment, several silhouettes appeared in front of the control formation. Impudent, no one is allowed to enter this place. Within the formation, the guardian of the Royal Sacred Sect opened his eyes, gleaming with sharpness as a cold light radiated from him. Scram! Only to see one of the newcomers walking out. Instantly, a terrifying aura gushed forth, causing the countenance of the guardian of the Sacred Battle platform to turn ashen. For countless years, there has never been anyone who dared to seize control of the Sacred Battle platform. This place was the place where the Royal Sacred Sect supervised the battles between the geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region. Who are you guys? That guard stood up from the center of the formation, staring at the silhouettes as he coldly spoke. Yi Qingyun. The voice of the newcomer was extremely calm. Momentarily, that guard froze as he understood. Scram back to the Royal Sacred Sect. Tell them that I, Yi Qingyun, along with my foster son, Qin Wentian, are waiting for them to kill me on the Sacred Battle platform. Yi Qingyun's voice shook the 9 heavens as terrifying sound waves engulfed the area, causing the void to tremble violently. Instantly, the hearts of those who heard his voice trembled violently. Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyun had arrived. However, they didn't head to the Royal Sacred Sect to await death. Instead, they went to the Sacred Battle platform, and even seized control of it. Busy. A raging wind gusted as the people of the Royal Sacred City sped towards the Sacred Battle platform. Their speed was extremely fast, as though they were afraid they would miss something. At the same time, the news of Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyun arriving on the sacred battle platform circulated around the entire royal sacred city. When the crowd arrived, they discovered Qin Wentian standing in the center of the platform with his eyes closed. On both sides of Qin Wentian, more and more experts arrived. These were none other than the experts from Yi as well as the Medicine Sovereign Valley. The experts from the royal sacred sect heard the news and immediately rushed over. Their gazes were extremely cold as they stared at Qin Wentian. "You are here to await death. What's the point of you running all the way to the sacred battle platform?" "Since the royal sacred sect wants me to die, I, Qin, naturally know that I have no way to resist. However, I, Qin, want to die with dignity. I want to see if there are any experts from the royal sacred sect who dares to challenge me. I, Qin Wentian, am a first-level ascendant, and I challenge anyone from the royal sacred sect who is at the third level of celestial phenomenon, regardless of age. If I can do so, I, Qin Wentian, shall take my own life in front of everyone." Qin Wentian's eyes were still closed as he slowly continued. "If the royal sacred sect, the hegemon of this world, doesn't even dare to agree to such a request, in that case, the title of the hegemon of the royal sacred region is nothing but an undeserved reputation. They don't even have a single man in their ranks. The hegemon of this world actually nurtured a bunch of good-for-nothings. This title is truly a joke." As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, the hearts of the spectators couldn't help but tremble as they stared at Qin Wentian with hints of sympathy in their eyes. Indeed, as the hegemon of this world, if the royal sacred sect wanted Qin Wentian to die, there was no way he could survive. Right now, he only wanted to die with dignity and dignity. If he was defeated, he would commit suicide. Such a tragic request, the royal sacred sect shouldn't reject it. They had no choice but to agree. If not, the people of this world would truly look down on this lofty hegemon of the royal sacred region. To the people of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect was sacred, lofty and unreachable. They gathered the strongest geniuses under the heavens, and any one of them was a supreme genius, possessing the most dazzling talent. In the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect was akin to a divinity. And now, Qin Wentian declared war against a divinity of the royal sacred region. Not only that it was on the sacred battle platform, this caused the blood of the spectators to boil involuntarily. More and more experts arrived, including those from the royal sacred sect. The spectators were all filled with anticipation. Although they knew that Qin Wentian would die for sure, they still wanted to personally witness the most dazzling young man of the royal sacred region in the past 10,000 years, unleashing his final radiance. Would he fall in the hands of a second-level ascendant, or a third-level ascendant? They didn't know if a first-level ascendant from the royal sacred sect would be able to defeat Qin Wentian. Most probably, it would be extremely difficult. The golden-armored warship arrived. The experts who went to Grand Xiaobak then brought many experts from the royal sacred region with them. All of them stared at Qin Wentian, their countenances extremely cold. Qin Wentian actually dared to challenge Qin Wentian on the sacred battle platform in front of the eyes of the entire world. Not only that, the royal sacred sect didn't have any reason to reject him. This point was clear just by looking at the expressions of the spectators below. Everyone was filled with anticipation. Chapter 699. Sacred Emperor, Sacred Battle Platform, Sacred Royal City, Sacred Royal Medallion. Anything with the word sacred in it would definitely have an extraordinary meaning to the people of the royal sacred region. Qin Wentian's choice of the sacred battle platform could be said to be extremely intelligent. Right now there were so many people gathered around the sacred battle platform, and it was unknown how many of them were there to witness this scene. His request was so tragic, he only wanted to fight to the death. If the royal sacred sect didn't accept the challenge, what would the people of the sacred royal city think of them? In addition, where did the grudge between Qin Wentian and the royal sacred sect originate from? He was originally born for the sake of battle. He had once killed Xiaosheng in the royal sacred sect, and was incomparably arrogant. But if the royal sacred sect wanted to kill him, The best method would be to send out even more outstanding geniuses to kill him. Only then would they be able to prove how outstanding the disciples of the Royal Sacred Sect were, and prove that the pride and holiness of the Royal Sacred Sect wasn't something that could be sullied. Qin Wentian, you are merely an ant. Are you even qualified to speak to my Royal Sacred Sect? You don't even have the qualifications to issue a challenge. The expert on the golden armored warship felt some trepidation. He had personally witnessed how Qin Wentian killed Qi Tai. It was simply too difficult for a first-level ascendant to kill Qin Wentian. Even in the Royal Sacred Sect, it would be extremely difficult to find such a person. As for a second-level ascendant acting, with so many spectators, even if he managed to kill Qin Wentian, it wouldn't be a glorious thing. And if he was defeated, it would be even more shameful. How could it be compared to directly oppressing Qin Wentian? The Royal Sacred Sect is truly pitiful. Yi Qingyun stood with his hands clasped behind his back as he emotionlessly spoke. The hegemon of the world, yet Qin Wentian isn't willing to participate in it. Hence, the Royal Sacred Sect has no place for geniuses that are more outstanding than them. You don't even have the courage to accept the challenge. If the Sacred Emperor knew that you all rejected the challenge, I wonder if he would feel shame for you all. Impudent. A thunderous roar rang out as more and more experts from the Royal Sacred Sect arrived. That expert surnamed Li who brought Qin Wentian to the Immortal Palace back then also arrived. He stood arrogantly in the air, staring at Qin Wentian as well as Yi Qingyun and the others as his countenance was extremely cold. Back then, he had given Qin Wentian a chance, inviting Qin Wentian to join the Royal Sacred Sect, but Qin Wentian had rejected. Naturally at that time he still didn't view Qin Wentian's weight too seriously, but he didn't expect that there would be such a storm of commotion after that. Beside this expert surnamed Li, Saiqiu also arrived. His eyes were sinister as killing intent radiated unceasingly from within. He stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. It was none other than this man who almost killed him back then in the Royal Sacred Sect. It was Xia Sheng who used his own life to exchange for Qin Wentian's. Of the three brothers, one died because Qin Wentian and Qin chose to save Fan Miaoyu, while the other was personally killed by Qin Wentian. But now, Qin Wentian was still alive and was provoking the Royal Sacred Sect. Am I being impudent? Yi Qingyun's eyes flashed with arrogance as he stared at the air. He continued, the reason why the Royal Sacred Sect is the hegemon of this world, and is known as the sacred ground, it's merely an undeserved reputation. As long as the geniuses nurtured by the other powers, the vast majority of them would be accepted by your Royal Sacred Sect, becoming disciples of your Royal Sacred Sect. For those who didn't want to accept your invitation, you would suppress and kill them, even boasting that the entire world belongs to the Royal Sacred Sect. Using the lives of countless people in Grand Xia to threaten me and Qin Wentian? Are you guys even qualified to be the hegemon of this world? Yi Qingyun's voice rang out, shaking the air for a radius of a few hundred miles. The hearts of the crowd were all filled with shock. The Royal Sacred Sect actually said that the entire world belongs to the Royal Sacred Sect? They actually dared to use the lives of countless people in Grand Xia to threaten Yi Qingyun and Qin Wentian? If this was the case, the Royal Sacred Sect was truly too tyrannical. It was as though the lives of everyone in the world belonged to them. My Royal Sacred Sect has been powerful for generations, our might shaking the world. Yi Qingyun, just a few words of yours, how can you sway the hearts of the people? The eyes of the expert surnamedly flickered with anger, yet he still calmly spoke, his voice shaking the nine heavens. Powerful for generations? I've already said that I want to challenge any third-level ascendant of the Royal Sacred Sect, letting the world see how strong the geniuses nurtured by the Royal Sacred Sect are. I want to know if they are worthy of being the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Sect. Kill me and you will be able to prove it. Such a simple matter. Why are you all still standing there? Qin Wentian stared at the expert surnamed Li as he sarcastically spoke. A towering aura gushed downwards as countless experts from the Royal Sacred Sect appeared in the airspace above the sacred battle platform. Over 1,000 experts from the Royal Sacred Sect descended as a stifling pressure bore down on everyone within a radius of a few hundred miles. This aura was simply too terrifying. GMO, go and kill him. The eyes of the expert surnamedly flickered with killing intent as he emotionlessly spoke. From the crowd of the Royal Sacred Sect, an expert walked out. This expert was none other than a junior of the Royal Sacred Sect. He was clad in black and had a middle-aged appearance, exuding an extremely cold aura. GMO had cultivated for 130 years, and was at the second level of celestial phenomenon. Although his cultivation base wasn't high, his foundation was extremely stable and his combat prowess was extremely strong. Among the younger generations of the G clan, GMO could be considered a rare combat genius. Even in the entire Royal Sacred Sect, GMO's combat prowess could be ranked within the top 3. GMO had 2 constellations, one for offense and one for defense. It was an extremely compatible combination. At this moment, GMO's silhouette slowly descended, moving towards the sacred battle platform. Yi Qingyun controlled the sacred battle platform and closed the screen of light, allowing Qin Wentian and GMO to battle within. Before the battle ended, the sacred battle platform wouldn't be opened. Yi Qingyun's eyes gleamed with sharpness. He hoped that Qin Wentian's combat prowess wouldn't disappoint him. Today, they wanted to make the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Sect fall from their divine pedestal, letting everyone see clearly that the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Sect was nothing but a facade. The elites of the world didn't need to join the Royal Sacred Sect. They could similarly kill demon-level geniuses of the Royal Sacred Sect. The Royal Sacred Sect was merely an empty name. The world still belonged to the people of the world. If there weren't any elites joining the Royal Sacred Sect, the Royal Sacred Sect would only have a single peak-level Sacred Emperor left. On the Sacred Battle platform, the eyes of GMO seemed to contain a terrifying demonic power, becoming even more demonic. Qin Wentian stared at GMO with his hands clasped behind his back. Abruptly, beams of astral light flashed. Qin Wentian seemed to see countless pupils within the constellation, causing Qin Wentian to feel as though he was falling into a world of pupils, causing his state of mind to be thrown into chaos. I-Technique Constellation. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. The astral souls of stellar martial cultivators were all different. For some experts, their astral souls would be a pair of demonic eyes that contained the power of I-Techniques. And after transforming into a constellation, the power of this I-Technique would be amplified to an even greater extent. At this moment, in this entire world, it was as though there were only those dazzling pairs of eyes. GMO's silhouette could no longer be seen. That expert surnamedly didn't casually allow GMO to fight against Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian challenged the Royal Sacred Sect in front of the entire world. Any defeat would definitely affect the prestige of the Royal Sacred Sect. He naturally hoped that the victor would be decided in a single battle, allowing Qin Wentian to commit suicide in front of the world, displaying the prestige of the Royal Sacred Sect. Qin Wentian's palms flashed with a resplendent light as he blasted out with a palm strike. With a thunderous boom, the changing pupils of GMO were directly destroyed. However, the pupils of Qin Wentian's eyes had a myriad of transformations, seemingly boundless, seemingly illusory yet also seemingly real. Seems like whether a celestial phenomenon ascendant is strong or not, to a large extent, the power of their constellation. Qin Wentian silently mused. The bewitching nature of this constellation was already extremely strong, far surpassing the level of hematite. It wouldn't be easy if he didn't unleash his constellation to kill his opponent. The changing pupils of GMO flickered in and out of existence, appearing right in front of Qin Wentian. Abruptly, numerous arms shot out from the pupils of GMO, transforming into a myriad of arms that blasted out with destructive might towards Qin Wentian. Busy. Releasing his astral souls, he manifested his constellation in an instant. Streams of incomparably resplendent light circulated around his body. His body shimmered with a strange runic light as demonic chi towered up into the sky. At the same time, the feathers of a golden rock appeared, stirring up the wind and clouds. Rumble, terrifying attacks bore down on the wings, causing Qin Wentian's body to tremble unceasingly. The attacks from the arms in the pupils of Qin Wentian were actually all real attacks. They weren't illusory at all. Crisp cracking sounds rang out as the golden wings on Qin Wentian's back shattered into pieces. However, at the same instant, Qin Wentian's dreamworld constellation enveloped this entire space as the omnipresent energy flowed through the air. Qin Wentian clenched his fist as a chaotic current of destruction destroyed all the illusory pupils. His opponent's constellation floated in the air once more, as though the control of this space was seized by Qin Wentian. At this moment, Jimo's body floated in the air as another constellation appeared behind him, radiating a protective glow. Right now, his countenance was extremely unsightly to behold as he stared at Qin Wentian. Your constellation actually has the ability to seize domains? What kind of constellation is this? My dream world constellation. In my dream world, the energy that belongs to me is omnipresent. Qin Wentian slowly spoke as a terrifying destructive might circulated in the air. His palms blasted out as the energy in the air transformed into a towering gigantic palm imprint that directly smashed out. With an intention of his will, GMO activated the boulder light to protect himself. The terrifying gigantic palm imprint smashed downwards, only to hear the sound of cracking sounds echoing out as his protective energy shattered apart. However, the energy from his constellation continued to flow into his surroundings, merely protecting him. Such a defensive power was simply too terrifying. Even second-level ascendants wouldn't be able to break through this layer of protection. Your attack power is very strong, but if it's merely this, I'm afraid it isn't enough to break through my constellation. GMO stepped out as the countless pupils in the air once again shone with a demonic light. Even you can't kill me. What's the point of me coming here? Qin Wentian icily spoke as demonic chi gushed forth from him. His entire person transformed into the silhouette of a golden rock as boundless sword might gushed forth. At this moment, every part of his body seemed to contain an indomitable might. Bzzz. A raging wind tore apart the void as a golden beam of light illuminated the heavens and earth. The energy from the Dreamworld constellation transformed into a towering radiance that enveloped the golden rock's wings, causing them to be countless times sharper compared to real swords. Chi-chi. A hurricane descended from the skies as the 1,000-meter-long wings slashed downwards. At this instant, it was as though countless wings were shining with a dazzling light as they slashed towards GMO. Gmo's countenance drastically changed. Astral light circulated around his entire body as the energy from the boulder light enveloped him. It was as though he was clad in an armor made of boulder astral might. His defense was indestructible. The golden wings slashed down, slashing against the boulder light as sparks of flames could be seen. However, the wings weren't obstructed at all, and continued slashing downwards, piercing into the boulder armor. Gmo's countenance was filled with terror, yet he was already powerless to reverse the situation. A beam of golden light slashed downwards as his body was cleaved into two. Chapter 700. Gmo's body lay on the sacred battle platform. Qin Wentian's palms trembled as he directly blasted out a palm imprint. An instant later, a beam of destructive light directly destroyed the body of the Royal Sacred Sect, turning it into dust. GMO, a second-level ascendant of the Royal Sacred Sect, was defeated, dead. The screen of light on the sacred battle platform opened. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the increasing number of experts from the Royal Sacred Sect. This was the first time Qin Wentian had seen such a powerful lineup. As expected of the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Region, it was unknown how many experts they had gathered. Just a single command from them was sufficient to shock an entire region. Just to kill me, they actually sent out such a lineup? How laughable! Qin Wentian mocked. The entire space was so silent that it was terrifying. Countless silhouettes gathered around the sacred battle platform. All of them were stunned by Qin Wentian's strength, as well as the strength of the Royal Sacred Sect. How strong was the determination of the Royal Sacred Sect to kill Qin Wentian? However, they also discovered that Qin Wentian also had a group of experts gathered around him. These should be experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley. If the Royal Sacred Sect's strength wasn't enough, it wouldn't be easy for them to kill Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian had already said that as long as there was someone at the third level of celestial phenomenon who could defeat him, he would commit suicide here. Could it be that the Royal Sacred Sect, a transcendent power that was 2 levels higher than him, still couldn't kill Qin Wentian? No matter how demon-level Qin Wentian was, this sounded somewhat ridiculous. Jimo's death naturally caused the Royal Sacred Sect to lose face. If they directly attacked and killed Qin Wentian now, it would instead cause the Royal Sacred Sect to be in an even more awkward position. Everyone would think that their Royal Sacred Sect truly had no other experts. Who should we send to fight? At the front of the Royal Sacred Sect, someone transmitted his voice to those beside him. This young man's combat prowess is truly terrifying. His constellation should be powerful as well, and he should have fused a total of 4 true intents. I'm afraid we have to send out third-level ascendants. How about letting Dongyu fight against him? Dongyu was one of the strongest third-level ascendants in the Royal Sacred Sect. His combat prowess was flawless, and the balance between his attacks and defense was almost perfect. Is Dongyu here? Someone asked. No, do I need to inform him to come? Everyone secretly conversed, and it all happened in an extremely short period of time. Dongyu is here. Moreover, not only Dongyu but he is also back. Qin Wentian is doomed. At this moment, that expert surnamed Li transmitted his voiceover, causing everyone to be stunned. At this moment, there seemed to be another group of people approaching from afar. A group of people directly passed through the crowd of people from the Royal Sacred Sect as they moved forward. That expert surnamed Li and the others stared at this group of people, and when they saw the young man in the lead, they were all stunned for a moment before expressions of joy flashed in their eyes. The young man in the lead wore a blue embroidered robe and a violet gold crown that bound his hair. His angular face was neat as if it had been carved by a blade, and his eyes shot out cold stars that faintly possessed a breathtaking sheen. Those accompanying him were all extraordinary characters. There were elder-level characters from the core faction, as well as Heaven's Chosen of the Royal Sacred Sect. Dongyu was one of them. Other than this, there were also a few other young men with extraordinary demeanors standing beside him. Their positions were even closer to the blue-robed young man compared to Dongyu. Zai Xian, you have returned. That expert surnamed Li nodded to the young man as a warm smile could be seen in his eyes. Such warmth was something he had never shown even when facing Zai Qiu. Uncle Ji. Zai Xian nodded to that expert surnamed Li. Elder brother Xian. Zai Qiu respectfully greeted. This Zai Xian had the same surname as him, the surname of the Sacred Emperor. There was no need to mention his identity, he was a descendant of the Sacred Emperor. However, his status in the Royal Sacred Sect was many times higher compared to Zai Qiu. MHM. Zai Xian glanced at Zai Qiu as he continued. I've heard of your matter. No wonder you weren't chosen by the Sacred Emperor to roam the world with me. You can't even handle the people here, you have to work harder in the future. Yes, elder brother Xian. Zai Qiu no longer had any arrogance in his tone as he obediently replied. The Royal Sacred Sect had been the hegemon of the Royal Sacred Region for many years. The current Sacred Emperor, naturally, wasn't the first-generation Sacred Emperor. Every generation of Sacred Emperors would select the most outstanding ones from the younger generations to be personally nurtured. After that, they would send them out of the Royal Sacred Region to roam the world. These chosen ones were all sacred princes who had the potential to break through to the legendary realm. Once one of them succeeded, they would inherit the position of the Sacred Emperor and nurture another Sacred Emperor in addition to cultivating. This was their mission. Only then would they be able to firmly control the Royal Sacred Region. As for those who weren't chosen, they would remain in the Royal Sacred Region to cultivate. Depending on their strength, they would assume different positions in the Royal Sacred Sect, ensuring that the Royal Sacred Sect would prosper and flourish. Zai Xian was the only sacred prince of Zai Qiu's generation that was chosen. In the future, he had the possibility to inherit the position of the Sacred Emperor. Even if he didn't manage to step into that realm, if he was willing to return to the Royal Sacred Sect, he would be able to assume a core position. Zai Xian, why did you return? An expert from the Royal Sacred Sect asked. This person was none other than an elder of Zai Xian. It's hard for you to understand even if I say it out loud. I'm still not sure about this matter. I only received a strand of news. If this matter is confirmed, the entire Royal Sacred Region would be in an uproar. I wonder how many experts from the outside world would step into our royal sacred region. Zai Xian faintly replied, his words causing bewilderment to appear on the faces of everyone. They had no way to understand the meaning behind Zai Xian's words. Zai Xian seemed to be saying that a shocking event would happen in the royal sacred region. However, he had no way to confirm it now. Let's settle the matters here first. Zai Xian faintly spoke. His gaze turned to Qin Wentian, who was on the sacred battle platform. He was also born in the royal sacred region. How could he not know about the sacred battle platform? Is he the one who almost killed you? Zai Xian asked Zai Qiu, who was beside him. Zai Qiu's countenance was sinister as he stared at Qin Wentian. The killing intent in his eyes didn't diminish in the slightest. You can't even deal with such a country bumpkin. You should really reflect on your actions. Zai Xian's voice was calm. What kind of storms and waves had he not seen before in the outside world? Any one of these geniuses could cause the sun and moon to lose their luster if they were placed in the royal sacred region. Since his vision was too high, the so-called geniuses of the royal sacred region naturally wouldn't be able to enter his eyes. In his eyes, they were like country bumpkins. Honestly speaking, the geniuses of the royal sacred region were nothing more than ordinary mortals. In his generation, the sacred emperor only selected him to go out. There were many others who could be considered supreme demon-level geniuses in the royal sacred region, yet the sacred emperor didn't choose to bring them out. From this point alone, it was only normal that Zai Xian would look down on the geniuses of the royal sacred region. When the crowd heard Zai Xian reprimanding Zai Qiu, and how the people of the royal sacred sect were all so respectful to him, they couldn't help but to have expressions of bewilderment on their faces. What was the identity of this young man exactly? He actually had such prestige, becoming the core of the royal sacred sect the moment he arrived. Not only for him, even the few young men besides Zai Xian all exuded extraordinary auras. Is the royal sacred sect going to fight or not? Qin Wentian couldn't help but coldly ask when he saw the people of the royal sacred sect chatting, completely forgetting about him. Not only that, the cultivation base of this young man was only at the 3rd level of celestial phenomenon. Yet his tone was extremely arrogant, referring to him as a country bumpkin. Just you? Are you even qualified to challenge my royal sacred sect? Zai Xian coldly glanced at Qin Wentian. Not qualified? An expression of interest appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he stared at Zai Xian in the air. He then sarcastically replied, I'm fighting against people of the royal sacred sect. If it wasn't for the fact that the royal sacred sect is protecting Zai Qiu, I would have long since killed him. I truly admire you for having the face to say such words. Zai Xian frowned as a cold intent flickered in his eyes. He coldly snorted. How would you know how vast the heavens are? Puchi, a young woman beside Zai Xian, laughed. This woman was clad in a tight-fitting long dress that accentuated her voluptuous figure, causing people to feel impulsive. Her skin was extremely fair, and her eyes were extremely bright. She was a perfect example of a beauty, and her demeanor was extraordinary. Zai Xian, you said that the sect you are in is the ruler of an entire region. But why do I feel that it's a little scary? Even a country bumpkin dares to disregard you? That beautiful young woman giggled. She was none other than Zai Xian's friend Lu Zian. Her relationship with Zai Xian wasn't bad. Zai Xian wanted to woo her, but she neither agreed nor rejected, maintaining their friendship. As to why she didn't agree, it was because from her perspective, Zai Xian was only SOSO and wasn't too outstanding. She didn't reject him because the Zai Xian clan was the hegemon of an entire region. Her clan also had experts at the Saint Emperor realm, but although such clans could be considered powerful in the outside world, they were different when compared to a hegemon of an entire region. A hegemon of an entire region could easily obtain an endless supply of resources. A region was an incomparably shocking amount of wealth that belonged to the country bumpkin. Lu Zian had obtained quite a lot of benefits from Zai Xian. This was also the reason why she kept trying to bait Zai Xian, who doesn't know how to talk big. Zai Xian smiled at Lu Zian. Zian, these country bumpkins are short-sighted and have no experience. Yet they claim to be geniuses. Not only that, They are filled with hot-bloodedness and have no fear of death. How laughable and pathetic. I've faintly discovered this point. Lu Ziyan glanced at the formation of the royal sacred sect. Killing the young man standing below would be extremely easy. However, that young man was truly courageous and had no fear at all. Not only that, his demeanor was extraordinary as well. His handsome face was filled with arrogance, exuding a sense of fiendishly good looks. However, a country bumpkin was still a country bumpkin. No matter how extraordinary his demeanor was, Lu Ziyan wouldn't place a country bumpkin in her eyes unless that country bumpkin underwent a transformation in the outside world. It wasn't that there weren't such people, but they were extremely rare, 1 in 10 million. Dong Yu, go and kill him. Zaixian glanced at a young man beside him. It was none other than Dong Yu. From his perspective, given Dong Yu's strength, it should be very easy for him to kill a country bumpkin. The eyes of this country bumpkin seemed to be filled with arrogance, staring at him with a mocking gaze. This caused him to feel a sense of ridicule. However, in the eyes of Qin Wentian, how could Zaixian's actions not be laughable? Chapter 701. Dong Yu walked towards the battle platform. His body floated in the air as he stared disdainfully at Qin Wentian. Your talent can be considered pretty good in the perspective of the royal sacred region. Although you did some wrong things before, my royal sacred sect could still tolerate you and allow you to join us. However, you chose to walk step by step towards the abyss. I truly feel pity for you. Now there's no path of return, only death is left for you. Dong Yu was a third-level ascendant, and could be considered an extremely dazzling character in the royal sacred sect. In the future, he was already destined to be one of the upper echelons of the core faction of the royal sacred sect. Before this, he didn't even come here personally. It was only because Zaixian returned and wanted to take a look that he tagged along. Who would have thought that he would actually need to act personally to kill someone? The disparity between the first and third level of celestial phenomenon was extremely vast. The strength of a constellation, as well as the amount of energy one could borrow from their constellation, were all many times stronger. Not to mention, the aura of a constellation would surge forth, as well as the strength of their attacks. Not only was Dong Yu confident, the experts of the royal sacred sect were all extremely confident in him as well. If Dong Yu personally acted, this time around, Qin Wentian would definitely die for sure. Do the people of the royal sacred sect only know how to use their mouths to fight? Qin Wentian teasingly stared at Dong Yu, causing a cold smile to appear on Dong Yu's face. After which, he descended onto the stone pillar on the battle platform. The light screen on the platform closed as Dong Yu unleashed his constellation. Astral light illuminated the entire sky, but the place where the light was the most intense was actually behind Dong Yu, where the silhouette of the Frost Monarch manifested. This constellation was an ice and snow constellation. In just an instant, the entire sacred battle platform transformed into a world of ice and snow. Everything was covered in a vast expanse of whiteness as a desolate cold chi permeated the air. Above the constellation, there seemed to be traces of ice and snow cascading downwards, each and every one of them capable of freezing people to death. Behind Dong Yu, the silhouette of the Frost Monarch manifested from ice and snow. Its eyes were snow-white in color, as though it could freeze the souls of those who stared at it. The ice and snow from the constellation unceasingly congregated around the Frost Monarch, causing the coldness within to be so great that ordinary ascendants wouldn't dare to get close to it. It was too cold, bone-chilling cold. A constellation was born from an astral soul. Dong Yu's constellation seemed to have returned to his astral soul. This was a type of manifestation of a constellation. Celestial phenomenon ascendants would be able to control it more freely, borrowing the power of their constellation to manifest such a phenomenon. That silhouette of the frigid monarch was precisely the condensed form of a constellation. The energy of the constellation unceasingly gathered around it, causing it to possess an extremely powerful might. Cold. This was what Qin Wentian was feeling at the moment. The coldness went deep into his bones and even into his soul, making him shiver involuntarily. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with demonic light as his dreamworld constellation appeared. Two constellations faintly overlapped with each other. Qin Wentian's Dreamworld constellation was in the center of the Frigid King's constellation, while Qin Wentian's Dreamworld constellation was also present. Two different types of energy flowed within this space. One of them was extremely cold, while the other was filled with destructive energy particles. A cold wind gusted by as the frigid qi transformed into a tempest, churning frenziedly in this space. Dong Yu coldly stood on the stone pillar, staring at the silhouette of Qin Wentian in front of him. His palms grabbed out in the air as a gigantic frost palm imprint appeared, freezing everything in its path. At this instant, Qin Wentian could clearly feel a terrifying wave of coldness gushing over, freezing everything in its path. Qin Wentian's body shimmered with light as the terrifying light converged into an ancient halberd that abruptly pierced out. Numerous halberd scars appeared in the air as boundless destructive light congregated at a single point, erupting forth in an instant, colliding with the gigantic palm imprint. With a thunderous boom, the halberd was directly torn apart. Your attack power isn't bad. Seems like your comprehension of true intent is truly impressive. However, the disparity in cultivation base isn't so easy to make up for. Dong Yu stepped out as the frigid king congregated behind him, unleashing a terrifying frost tempest, unceasingly blasting towards Qin Wentian. The power of the frost tempest blotted out the skies and covered the earth as it swept outwards. Gusts of wind intent gushed towards Qin Wentian, causing his skin to show signs of freezing to death. His countenance flashed with a resplendent astral light as his body abruptly expanded. His robes were shredded to shreds as he donned an astral armor. Runic light circulated around his body as his body became indestructible, akin to a fiend god that could suppress everything. Dong Yu's silhouette got closer and closer. The frost tempest formed by the frigid king was akin to countless icy blades, unceasingly gushing towards Qin Wentian. In the air, a millstone of destructive frost tempest appeared, seemingly boundless and limitless, slashing towards Qin Wentian. How cold! Qin Wentian's body was covered by a layer of frost. This kind of coldness was so cold that it could freeze people to death. The frost qi could corrode into one's body, destroying all vitality within. Qin Wentian's entire body was showing signs of freezing. Qi. Sharp sounds rang out from Qin Wentian's body. That frost energy wanted to shatter his defenses, causing his four limbs to stiffen. Although his defense was extremely strong, if he kept on defending, his vitality would be frozen to death sooner or later. Dong Yu, who was at the third level of celestial phenomenon, was indeed very powerful. Die. Dong Yu coldly snorted. Within the frost tempest formed by the frigid king, a grand frost annihilation palm imprint descended from the skies, directly pressing towards Qin Wentian. A terrifying destructive energy circulated around Qin Wentian's body. Demonic qi churned unceasingly as his aura soared upwards. His palms trembled as he stabbed out with his halberd. Boundless energy was contained within, wanting to destroy everything. Bang! The ancient halberd directly pierced into the descending palm imprint, shattering it apart. However, the frost energy continued to flow downwards. Dong Yu coldly snorted. The frigid king roared in rage as he sent out yet another grand frost annihilation palm imprint. When Qin Wentian inclined his head, he only saw the frigid king frenziedly blasting out palm imprints, covering the entire space. Qin Wentian's attack speed was extremely fast. The ancient halberd in his hands pierced out unceasingly, causing rumbling sounds to echo unceasingly as the palm imprints shattered one after another. His palms grabbed out in the air as runic light flashed. His palms seizing stars directly blasted towards Dong Yu. Dong Yu coldly snorted. Activating the frigid king's protection, he actually managed to block Qin Wentian's attack with his palms. Suppressed. Qin Wentian is being suppressed. This Dong Yu's combat prowess is so powerful. The heaven chosen of the royal sacred sect is indeed powerful, but he is 2 levels higher than Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's combat prowess is already extremely terrifying. The hearts of the spectators mused. They only saw Dong Yu getting closer and closer as he frenziedly blasted out attacks. Qin Wentian's fiend god form seemed to have traces of turning into ice. How do you think you can fight against me? Dong Yu's arrogant voice rang out. Qin Wentian's body shone with a resplendent golden rock light. With a flap of his wings he retreated, yet Dong Yu directly rushed over. Dong Yu's palms blasted out in the air as the entire space around him froze. The power of ice blocked Qin Wentian's retreat, and for every step he took, the frozen space would emit cracking sounds. Freezing annihilation finger. Dong Yu's eyes gleamed with coldness as he gathered the might of the frigid king. His finger stabbed out in the direction of Qin Wentian. The heavens and earth howled as the formless freezing annihilation energy gushed forth, permeating every inch of this space, corroding Qin Wentian's body. In an instant, Qin Wentian's defenses were broken through as he felt a sense of his body being frozen. The coldness caused his entire body to tremble as the energy in his body flowed unsmoothly. Dong Yu's strength can also be considered powerful in my royal sacred sect. It's extremely easy for him to kill this ignorant brat. In the air, Zaixian spoke to Lu Ziyan, who was beside him. Not bad, but I didn't personally experience the strength of that energy. I don't know how strong it is exactly. However, the strength of that country bumpkin isn't bad as well. A genius of your royal sacred sect killing a low-level country bumpkin isn't something to be proud of, right? Lu Ziyan laughed. A battle between country bumpkins didn't seem to be able to stir her interest. Ziyan, you naturally wouldn't be interested in their battle. Zaixian laughed. I wonder if that news is true or false. If it's true, Ziyan, our horizons would truly be broadened. At that time, I wonder how many demon-level geniuses would gather in our royal sacred region. I'm also filled with anticipation. Lu Ziyan's beautiful eyes flashed with a dazzling light. It's just that I feel that this is a little surreal. According to what you said, this royal sacred region should be one of the weaker regions. If that supreme existence wanted to recruit a disciple, it's unknown how many geniuses would rush over to recruit him. Why would he choose such a remote place like the royal sacred region? Haha, what's so bad about that? Who knows, maybe we would have a chance as well. Zaixian laughed. Oh. Lu Ziyan felt disdain in her heart, but she still smiled. If you can become the disciple of that supreme existence, even if you are just an outer disciple, I will immediately marry you. You can do whatever you want to me. Really? Zaixian glanced at the graceful curves of Lu Ziyan as a look of greed flashed in his eyes. He has wanted to eat this woman for a very long time, but this woman was too intelligent. She kept whetting his appetite, causing him to have no choice but to continue contacting her. Naturally. But Zaixian, do you have that capability? Lu Ziyan giggled, causing Zaixian's countenance to darken. Indeed, if such a supreme existence wanted to recruit a disciple, how could it be Zaixian's turn? He was completely unqualified. If he competed, he wouldn't be able to win against those supreme geniuses. Lu Ziyan laughed when she saw Zaixian's expression, after which, she continued staring at the sacred battle platform. Over there, Qin Wentian's body seemed to be undergoing a transformation. Around him, a resplendent light could be seen radiating forth, incomparably resplendent. An intense beam of light flashed. The resplendent violet gold light illuminated the entire sacred battle platform. In the center of the sacred battle platform, a violet gold astral soul appeared, causing the smile on Zaixian's face to freeze. The smile on Lu Ziyan's face also froze abruptly, frozen in place at this instant. What astral soul is that? It actually has a violet gold halo? Many people mumbled. This was the first time they saw an astral soul with such a luster. Don't tell me that this is the legendary 7th heavenly layer astral soul. Someone thought of a possibility as his heart pounded violently. Chapter 702. Zaixian and Lu Ziyan were both knowledgeable people. They were different from the majority of the people in the royal sacred region. Within the royal sacred region, very few people knew what an astral soul from the 7th heavenly layer would look like. At most, they would have heard of it before. However, Zaixian and Lu Ziyan came from outside the royal sacred region. They naturally understood what the radiance of Qin Wentian's astral soul signified. The more they understood, the more astonishment they felt in their hearts. How is this possible? An expression of disbelief flashed in Zaixian's eyes. He even doubted his own eyes. This should be Qin Wentian's fifth astral soul. But even so, he clearly knew how rare it was for an astral soul to be condensed from an astral soul from the seventh heavenly layer. Those who could condense an astral soul from the seventh heavenly layer were all heaven's chosen from the transcendent powers. Their radiance was incomparably dazzling. Yet the person in front of him was merely a country bumpkin in his eyes. Such a contrast caused Zai Xian to feel a sense of surrealism, as well as an intense sense of shock. A country bumpkin whom he had ridiculed had actually condensed a violet gold astral soul. Looking at the countenance of that country bumpkin, there were no fluctuations in his expression. Most probably, even he himself didn't know what a violet gold astral soul signified. Qin Wentian indeed wasn't very clear. He knew that the first astral soul he condensed was from an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. But after that, his second and third astral souls were condensed from the fifth heavenly layer. He only broke through after condensing his fourth astral soul, and condensing his fifth astral soul from the seventh heavenly layer. He felt that this shouldn't be something to be proud of. Maybe, many heavens chosen would also be able to achieve this. For example, back then when he saw the Dark Shadow Sovereign's constellation, he already knew that his constellation was condensed from an astral soul from the sixth heavenly layer. Since the Dark Shadow Sovereign could condense an astral soul from the sixth heavenly layer, there would definitely be many others who could do the same. The seventh heavenly layer wasn't that conspicuous. But in reality, Qin Wentian's thinking was wrong. It wasn't difficult to condense an astral soul from the sixth heavenly layer, but if one wanted to break through to the seventh heavenly layer, it would be as difficult as ascending the heavens. The perception of stellar martial cultivators towards the constellations wasn't something that could be achieved in a single step. It was something that could be strengthened bit by bit, as one's cultivation base increased. Hence, to many stellar martial cultivators in the royal sacred region, when their first astral soul originated from the first heavenly layer, their second astral soul would at most be from the second heavenly layer, and their third astral soul would at most be from the third heavenly layer. After that, they might not even be able to break through to the third heavenly layer. But for some geniuses, condensing an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer was already a heavenly realm, was already considered a point. From the heaven of Tiane the Tian of, and there the heavenly Tian of heavenly clan, the king from the heavenly clan of the astral Tian, they could. Tian of which their astral they had. From of it, the emperor from emperor sect, family sect from the emperor. Of clan king sect from they 1 if 1 they 1 and 1, emperor 1 from 1. Zai Xian and Lu Zian's horizons were broadened. Such geniuses in their world couldn't be considered heaven's chosen. They could only be considered characters with slightly better talent. But even in the outside world, the combination of geniuses should be 4-4-5-5-6, or even 4-5-5-5-6. For those who were even more outstanding, they could condense an astral soul from the sixth heavenly layer on their fourth astral soul. But even in the outside world, the combination of geniuses should be 4-4-5-5-6, or even 4-5-5-5-6. Even more outstanding ones would be 4-5-5-6-6, and the last type of combination would be 4-5-5-6-6, and the last type of combination would be 4-5-5-6-6. Naturally, there were also extremely rare demon-level characters in the outside world. Their first astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer, and their combination would be 5-5-5-6-6. Such a combination would definitely be considered a supremely powerful combination. Even more heaven-defying were those legendary characters. Their first astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. Only then would they be able to condense an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. Only then would they be able to condense an astral soul from the fifth heavenly layer. After stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm, they would consume some heavenly and earthly treasures to increase their compatibility with the astral energy, strengthening their perception and will. From there, they would be able to condense their fifth astral soul and step into the seventh heavenly layer. For such characters, Lu Zian had never personally seen them before. She would only occasionally hear the elders of the royal sacred region talking about the glorious history of these characters. At this moment, she saw a violet-gold astral soul in the body of a country bumpkin in the royal sacred region. Lu Zian rubbed her eyes to confirm that she didn't see wrongly. A strange expression involuntarily flashed through her beautiful eyes. In the outside world, there were also stories of some country bumpkins of the royal sacred region who had cleansed themselves of all impurities, becoming supreme characters that exuded magnificence throughout the generations. These country bumpkins were actually even more terrifying because they climbed up step by step from the bottom up. Their will and determination were extremely tough, and their combat prowess at the same cultivation level was terrifying to the extreme. Lu Zian faintly felt that she might have found a country bumpkin who had the potential to blossom with radiance. As she thought of this, her eyes involuntarily brightened as she stared at Qin Wentian. At this moment, when Lu Zian glanced at Qin Wentian again, she could feel that Qin Wentian was extremely handsome. That sharp edge, that devilishly handsome countenance, all of them exuded a sense of unyielding determination. His eyes glowed with life, and there was even a faint trace of an unexcelled sovereign descending from the heavens. Although this sounded a little strange, Qin Wentian's aura was just there. Earlier Lu Zian didn't notice it, but now her eyes brightened as she discovered it. Actually, this was all because her state of heart had changed. At the start, when she looked at the people here, she had the attitude of looking at country bumpkins. Even if Qin Wentian was extraordinary, she only felt that he was interesting. That arrogance in her eyes was just ignorance and didn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. But now things were different. Those laughable flaws suddenly became the shining points of light. Zaixian, your royal sacred sect didn't go all out to recruit such a character, but instead sent out such a powerful group to hunt him down. Seems like the people of your royal sacred sect are the ones who don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. Lu Zian had a mocking expression on her face. She wasn't afraid that Zaixian would be angry. In any case, Zaixian was the one pursuing her, not the other way around. Zaixian's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. He turned his gaze onto those upper echelons of the royal sacred sect only to see that they were all stunned by the astral souls Qin Wentian released. However, the eyes of the expert surnamedly flickered with coldness as he spoke. Sir, you might not know this, but this man is extremely arrogant. Our royal sacred sect has invited him many times to join us, yet he rejected every single time. Not only that, he actually slaughtered his way into our royal sacred sect. Our royal sacred sect tolerated him, yet he grew even more arrogant. Lu Zian noncommittally laughed. She stared at the battlefield on the sacred battle platform as she spoke. I'm afraid third-level ascendants like you all might not be able to kill him. Leaving aside the others, even the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, as well as Yi Qingyan, were momentarily stunned when they saw Qin Wentian releasing his astral souls. After which, they drew in a deep breath, feeling an intense shock in their hearts. A violet gold astral soul. Was this an astral soul from the 7th heavenly layer? The astral soul that appeared behind Qin Wentian was none other than his 5th astral soul. This astral soul was condensed from a human-shaped constellation from the 7th heavenly layer. Above his violet gold astral soul, a heaven-suppressing silhouette could be seen, resembling an immortal king that could suppress the heavens. Boundless runic light circulated around its body, and it was as though every strand of runic light contained a terrifying might within. The aura radiating from this astral soul was unimaginably powerful. It was as though there was a boundless amount of astral light circulating around it, suppressing everything around Qin Wentian. Dongyu was facing directly against Qin Wentian. When his astral soul was released, the impact on him was the most intense. However, as expected of a heaven chosen of the royal sacred sect, he instantly adjusted his state of mind. The Frost King's silhouette radiated a frigid underworld chi that spanned tens of millions of meters, directly enveloping the heavens and earth as it gushed towards Qin Wentian. Die. Dongyu once again stabbed out a finger at Qin Wentian. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's divine light was as dazzling as lightning. His palms glowed with a resplendent violet gold runic light as his arms expanded explosively. Boundless runic light smashed downwards, instantly suppressing the entire space. Dong Yu's body violently shuddered as he felt his body stiffening. The boundless suppressive might bore down on him, enveloping this entire space. However, at this moment, Dong Yu pressed his palms together and closed his eyes. In an instant, astral light flowed in reverse as another resplendent constellation appeared. This was Dong Yu's second type of constellation. In an instant, the snowy world formed by the Frost King transformed into lava from hell, melting the entire world. One ice, one fire, one cold, one hot. It was as though the power of two extremes was reversed in the blink of an eye. Endless streams of scorching heat gushed towards Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to feel as though he was about to be melted into ashes. In that instant of change, the destructive might was so overwhelming that Qin Wentian felt cracks appearing on his body, as though it was about to break apart. Incomparably resplendent runic light circulated around his entire body. At the same time, his palms blasted out in the air as a supreme suppressive might bore down on all 8 directions. The runic light transformed into a resplendent diagram, enveloping the entire space, after which Qin Wentian stepped out, coldly staring at Dong Yu. A completely different type of constellation. Dong Yu's strength was truly shocking, as expected of a demon-level genius of the Royal Sacred Sect. But even so, Qin Wentian would definitely kill him today. The entire space was still within the Dreamworld constellation. Within the constellation, the omnipresent destructive might interweaved. Violet gold runic light circulated around Qin Wentian. He stomped heavily on the ground, suppressing the space around him. With a wave of his hand, boundless suppressive might blasted towards Dong Yu. Dong Yu countered with his palms, alternating between hot and cold as his attacks towered up into the sky. Qin Wentian carried his astral soul on his back, as his palms blasted out with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. His palms blasted out with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas, causing countless afterimages to appear. In a short instant, the entire space was filled with a boundless suppressive might. The towering violet gold runic light suppressed Dong Yu within a small space, causing him to become smaller and smaller. Finally, when the violet gold runic diagram closed, the suppressive might directly crush Dong Yu into nothingness as his soul dissipated. A heaven chosen of the Royal Sacred Sect was killed alive. Chapter 703. Dong Yu, a heaven chosen of the Royal Sacred Sect with a cultivation base at the 3rd level of celestial phenomenon. Qin Wentian wasn't willing to join the Royal Sacred Sect. His cultivation base was at the 1st level of celestial phenomenon, and he was ranked 1st in the immortal martial realm. His talent was above the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, and his 5th astral soul was violet gold in color. The two of them fought on the sacred battle platform, and Qin Wentian killed Dong Yu. There was no need to say anything more about the difference in talent. Dong Yu was 2 levels higher than Qin Wentian, yet he was still killed. The so-called geniuses of the Royal Sacred Sect were nothing more than a joke in front of Qin Wentian. Just like what Qin Wentian and Yi Qingyan had said, the Royal Sacred Sect was the hegemon of this world. The reason why they were strong was because they had recruited the elites of the world. As for the demon-level geniuses they nurtured, they were killed by Qin Wentian, who was 2 levels higher than them. No words could be more convincing than actions. At this moment, the countenances of the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect turned ashen. Dong Yu's death on the sacred battle platform was undoubtedly a slap in the face by Qin Wentian in front of everyone in the world. The hegemon of this world didn't live up to its name. The screen of light on the sacred battle platform opened. Yi Qingyan stared at the air as he emotionlessly spoke. If there were no people under the heavens, how would there be a Royal Sacred Sect? What's laughable is that the current Royal Sacred Sect proclaims themselves to be the hegemon of this world, treating the lives of the people under the heavens like weeds. They actually used Yi and Granxia to threaten me and Qin Wentian. How lamentable. If the Royal Sacred Sect can't stand the sight of Qin Wentian and me, they can just come and kill us. Lu Zian smiled as she watched everything unfold. The Royal Sacred Sect was the king of this world, ruling over an entire region. But now there seemed to be people rebelling. Not only that, the first person to rebel was actually a demon-level genius with a violet gold astral soul. Sadly, this young man was born in a country bumpkin world. If he was born in the outside world, how could a mere power like the royal sacred sect dare to kill him? It was unknown how many powerful characters would be willing to act for him, destroying the royal sacred sect in an instant. Such a melodramatic scene could only be seen in the world of the natives. Zaixian stared at Qin Wentian as his eyes flickered with a hint of jealousy. He was the sacred prince, yet in the territory of his royal sacred sect, a country bumpkin actually had a talent that surpassed his. Not only that, he was still bragging earlier, and was heard by Lu Zian, who was beside him. Now when he saw the smile on Lu Zian's face, he couldn't help but feel that there was no face left on his face. However, if Qin Wentian was born in the outside world, he would have many opportunities. But this place was the world of the royal sacred sect. So what if Qin Wentian's talent was high? Qin Wentian would still be a treasure in the bag. If I had such an astral soul, I would have long been accepted as a personal disciple by some powerful characters. A cold light flickered in the depths of Zaixian's eyes, yet he didn't reveal it. He stared at Qin Wentian. Your talent is truly extraordinary. My royal sacred sect is the hegemon of this world, but it's not because we don't have the ability to tolerate others. Even now, I'm still willing to give you a chance. As long as you are willing to submit, my royal sacred sect is still willing to nurture you. At this moment, what Zaixian was thinking in his heart was that as long as Qin Wentian agreed and entered his royal sacred sect, wouldn't Qin Wentian be under his control? At that time, he would use some special methods to make Qin Wentian submit to him. Even if Qin Wentian wanted to, it would be impossible for him to break free. Qin Wentian would forever be his loyal slave. Are you joking? Qin Wentian inclined his head. His demonic eyes stared at Zaixian in the air as a mocking look flashed in his eyes, causing Zaixian to furrow his brows. After which, he heard Qin Wentian continuing. I need the royal sacred sect to nurture me. Is your royal sacred sect even worthy? As the sound of his voice faded, the hearts of everyone shuddered, causing Zaixian's countenance to turn ashen. Although these words were arrogant, there was no way to refute it. The battle earlier was still fresh in his mind. Qin Wentian killed 2 heaven-chosen of the royal sacred sect one after another, and both of them had a higher cultivation base compared to him. Yet Zaixian said that he wanted the royal sacred sect to nurture Qin Wentian? What a joke. The person you nurtured was killed by someone who jumped levels to kill him. Yet you still have the face to say that you would nurture others? This is already the limit of what my royal sacred sect can tolerate. Your hands are stained with the blood of our sect's members. If you continue to be so brazen, we can only kill you. Zaixian's voice was so cold that it could pierce one's bones. A cold intent gushed forth, gushing towards Qin Wentian. Tolerate? How laughable. If my strength was slightly weaker, would I still be alive and standing here listening to your words? You all want to kill me, yet you don't allow me to resist? Resistance is arrogance? Your logic makes me look at you in a new light. Qin Wentian sarcastically continued. Don't forget what I said before I came to the sacred battle platform. The royal sacred sect is openly admitting that you guys are the hegemons of this world. Is there really no one else? I allowed you guys to be 2 levels higher than me, yet there's still no one who dares to fight me? Zaixian, this brat is truly too arrogant. There's no need to waste words with him, just kill him directly. An old man from the royal sacred sect spoke. If they continued to let Qin Wentian live, it would only tarnish the prestige of the royal sacred sect. They had to kill him no matter what. The royal sacred sect, the hegemon of this world. From today onwards, you will become a joke, a disgrace to the world. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the experts in the air. His objective today had already been achieved. Staring at the ugly expressions on the faces of the experts from the royal sacred sect, Qin Wentian understood that after this battle, the royal sacred sect of the royal sacred region would fall from their divine pedestal. They would no longer be the god that everyone worshipped, the supreme and lofty sacred ground of the martial path. They were tyrannical, domineering. Those who submitted to them would prosper, those who defied them would die. They weren't as perfect and powerful as people imagined. Those nurtured by the royal sacred sect could also be defeated. A true demon-level character didn't even need to join the royal sacred sect. Kill. Zai Xian's expression turned sinister. His patience had already reached its limit. This brat insulted the royal sacred sect the moment he opened his mouth. If he didn't kill this brat, where would the prestige of the royal sacred sect be? As the sound of the word kill faded, a terrifying might instantly engulfed the heavens and earth, pressing down onto the sacred battle platform. How tyrannical! A voice drifted over. After which, a silhouette abruptly appeared on the sacred battle platform. It was none other than the medicine sovereign. He stood there, yet there seemed to be a formless energy of the great Tao radiating out for a distance of 1,000 miles. This entire space seemed to be locked down, and the destructive storm of destruction was actually suppressed by an incomparably terrifying energy, unable to descend any further. The medicine sovereign has arrived. Why is he so powerful? The hearts of the spectators trembled. So many major characters from the royal sacred sect had come, and among them, there were even peak-level ascendants. But just by standing there, the medicine sovereign seemed to have calmed down. Exactly how powerful was this ancient existence of the royal sacred region? Qin Wentian is the husband of my personal disciple, Mo Qingcheng. In other words, he is equivalent to my son-in-law. The royal sacred sect is too overbearing, sending so many experts to kill Qin Wentian. Don't they have this old man in their eyes? The medicine sovereign glanced at the experts in the air as he coldly spoke. Medicine sovereign, there's no place for you to interfere today. Zai Xian coldly spoke. However, the medicine sovereign swept a glance at him before flicking his sleeves. A crisp sound rang out as Zai Qiu's body was directly flung through the air as blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you speak to this old man in such a manner? The medicine sovereign coldly spoke. Medicine sovereign, why are you interfering in the matters of the juniors? At this moment, a voice abruptly drifted over from the air, after which, a face appeared in the air, causing the hearts of countless to tremble. We pay our respects to the sacred emperor. Some of the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect bowed when they saw this face, respectfully greeting. We pay our respects to the sacred emperor. The other experts of the royal sacred sect all felt their hearts trembling when they heard the arrival of the sacred emperor. All of them knelt on one knee, welcoming the sacred emperor. At this instant, the hearts of everyone in the sacred royal city couldn't help but shudder. Today, the hegemon of the royal sacred sect, the sacred emperor, had personally arrived on the sacred battle platform. Yet that face of his seemed as though he didn't see it. His gaze was fixed on the medicine sovereign. Matters of the juniors? The entire royal sacred sect dares to bully my son-in-law? Do they even have this old man in their eyes? The medicine sovereign inclined his head and stared at the air with no fear at all. His words caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. The medicine sovereign actually dared to speak to the sacred emperor of the royal sacred sect in this manner? A possibility suddenly appeared in their hearts as their hearts involuntarily pounded violently, causing great waves of shock to rise in their hearts. No matter what, at our level of cultivation, we shouldn't interfere in matters of the juniors. The sacred emperor calmly spoke, as though he wanted to verify the thoughts of everyone. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire space trembled. At our level of cultivation, the medicine sovereign had already reached the same level as the sacred emperor? No wonder Qin Wentian dared to do this. With the medicine sovereign supporting him, what wouldn't he dare to do? Actually, at this moment, Qin Wentian's heart was also pounding as he stared at the old man in front of him. So it turned out that the medicine sovereign had already reached that level? Ooh. Exhaling a turbid breath, Qin Wentian bitterly smiled as he shook his head. He naturally didn't come here today to seek death. In truth, he had always been in contact with those from the medicine sovereign valley, discussing how to deal with this matter. The medicine sovereign sent a message to him, telling him to do as he pleased. This was why Qin Wentian would appear on the sacred battle platform and challenge the prestige of the royal sacred sect. He had always been thinking what trump card the medicine sovereign was relying on to be so arrogant. Could it be that Uncle Black and the others would act for him again? But in truth he was wrong. If it wasn't for the date of Qin Wentian's wedding, Uncle Black and the others wouldn't have appeared. Qin Wentian's wedding was simply too important. Uncle Black still had to complete the instructions of Qin Wentian's mother, hence he had no choice but to appear. If not, even now, Qin Wentian wouldn't know that the medicine sovereign was acquainted with Uncle Black and the others. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian felt as though he was enlightened. No wonder the medicine sovereign dared to go to the royal sacred sect to protect him, speaking on equal terms with the sacred emperor. So it turned out that the medicine sovereign had already stepped into that realm. What was laughable was that he only understood it now. The medicine sovereign stared at the calm countenance in the air as he spoke. In that case, killing Qin Wentian was indeed approved by you. You are the sacred emperor, yet you want to interfere in the matters of Qin Wentian? Seems like your cultivation of the heart isn't up to par yet. Today, you won't be able to protect him. If you insist on protecting him, I will act. The calm voice of the sacred emperor contained an unquestionable might within. His words caused everyone to be even more shocked. The sacred emperor wanted Qin Wentian to die. Qin Wentian was simply too dazzling. Especially today, he had revealed his violet gold astral soul. Since he was an enemy, the sacred emperor had no choice but to kill him. Chapter 704. The appearance of the sacred emperor caused everyone to sigh. So it turned out that the sacred emperor was not a saint, he was just strong. Qin Wentian threatened the royal sacred sect. Hence, the sacred emperor didn't hesitate to appear, wanting to reap Qin Wentian's life. Today, although the sacred emperor and the royal sacred sect appeared here in a supreme manner, to the experts of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect was no longer as sacred as before. The medicine sovereign inclined his head, staring at the face in the air as he coldly spoke. Fine, since you are threatening me like this, I won't act. But I'll also say this, if you dare to kill Qin Wentian, I will make sure that all the experts of your royal sacred sect die. The medicine sovereign's long beard fluttered in the wind, his imposing voice causing the hearts of everyone to tremble violently. Just from the conversation between the sacred emperor and the medicine sovereign, this grudge was already formed. The medicine sovereign wanted to protect Qin Wentian, while the sacred emperor wanted to kill him. Since this was the case, the medicine sovereign promised the sacred emperor that he wouldn't act. However, the two of them were not allowed to participate. If the sacred emperor participated, the medicine sovereign would slaughter everyone from the royal sacred sect. Both of them spat out ruthless words, forming a grudge between two supreme experts of the royal sacred region. Not only that, since the medicine sovereign had also broken through to the sacred emperor realm, the position of the royal sacred sect as the hegemon of the royal sacred sect would definitely be shaken. And as expected, in the next instant the medicine sovereign spoke. From today onwards, the medicine sovereign valley will start recruiting disciples from the royal sacred region. My medicine sovereign valley might not have many other things, but what we have is heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures. If your talent is high enough, I can let you eat medicinal pills like rice. Other than medicinal pills, I've also accumulated some savings during these years roaming the outside world. My wealth wouldn't lose out to the royal sacred sect by much. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire royal sacred region would tremble. The mysterious medicine sovereign valley, in the past, had never contended for power, they only existed in this world in a transcendent manner. But now, it seemed that the royal sacred sect had forced the medicine sovereign valley to reveal themselves and officially recruit disciples from the outside world. Today, I shall let them see the power of my medicine sovereign. You want to kill Qin Wentian? Show me what you got. The medicine sovereign faintly spoke. Instantly, a group of experts from the medicine sovereign valley stepped out. With a wave of their hands, terrifying divine weapons appeared one after another. These divine weapons were in different shapes and sizes. There were humans, there were demonic beasts, and all of them were gigantic in size, exuding boundless might. A puppet, a very powerful puppet. Staring at those gigantic beasts, the hearts of the crowd trembled. The medicine sovereign was a genius in the world of alchemy, the #1 alchemist in the royal sacred region. Now that they knew his cultivation base, what level had his pill concoction reached? However, puppets belong to the category of divine weapons, and should have been forged by grandmasters. The medicine sovereign actually collected so many puppets for combat. However, they soon understood. The medicine sovereign's talent was alchemy. In that case, there would be times when he would be coveted by others. It was unavoidable for him to protect himself. Puppets would undoubtedly be able to increase his combat prowess, hence, it was normal for him to collect them. As for the price of collecting powerful puppets, as long as one had alchemy skills, they could directly exchange for them with pills. A truly powerful puppet was a strengthened version of a divine weapon. There were many divine inscriptions and formations inscribed within, allowing them to unleash an overwhelming might. In addition, the requirements for the materials used to forge them were also extremely high. With the toughness of divine weapons, their attack and defense were also extremely strong. Other than being harder to control, they were basically invulnerable in all other aspects. This time around, the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley took out over 30 powerful puppets. There were human-shaped puppets and demonic beasts as well. The experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley directly stepped into the puppets and started controlling them. The sound of metal clashing rang out as the puppets glowed with a luster, causing everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. When they inclined their heads, a sharp aura towered up to the skies. What a powerful aura! These are all puppets at the peak level. The hearts of the crowd trembled. The Medicine Sovereign soared up into the air, standing together with the gigantic face of the Sacred Emperor. Kill! How could the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect be afraid? Today, the Sacred Emperor personally came, and countless experts from the Royal Sacred Sect were here, including many supreme existences at the peak of celestial phenomenon. So what if they were to fight against puppets? Beside Qin Wentian, a supremely gigantic combat puppet appeared. It was an incomparably gigantic golden dragon with a length of 3,000 meters, exuding a terrifying aura. The eyes of this gigantic golden dragon stared up at the skies, after which, its gigantic feet stomped down on the ground, causing the entire sacred battle platform to tremble. Resplendent runic lights flashed, and after that, a terrifying spatial energy gushed forth as the gigantic body of the golden dragon vanished from sight, reappearing in the midst of the experts from the Royal Sacred Sect. The sharp claws of the golden dragon slashed out as a towering spatial tempest instantly manifested, destroying everything within a radius of 100 miles. The destructive might contained within was truly capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Numerous experts of the Royal Sacred Sect had their bodies torn apart as fresh blood splattered through the air. There were even some experts who were directly torn apart by the terrifying spatial tempest. If one didn't have a cultivation base at the peak of celestial phenomenon, they were nothing more than a piece of paper in front of the golden dragon, easily torn apart. How powerful! The spectators from afar all inclined their heads and stared at the golden dragon in the air. This strike seemed to prove the saying, in front of absolute strength, the advantage of numbers was nothing but a joke. Although the golden dragon's attacks were extremely powerful, the person controlling it was unable to unleash its agility. After launching the attack, a series of incomparably resplendent and tyrannical attacks landed on the golden dragon's body. The terrifying sound of friction was ear-piercing, but the golden dragon's body only caved in slightly. It was not destroyed at all. The toughness of this puppet had reached a shocking level. The countenance of the Sacred Emperor, who was in the air, was extremely unsightly to behold. He glanced at the Medicine Sovereign. How could he not understand that these powerful combat puppets originated from the external world? The people of the Royal Sacred Region wouldn't be able to create such powerful combat puppets. Boom, boom, boom. The earth started to tremble as cracks appeared on the sacred battle platform. Numerous fearsome combat puppets soared up into the air, unleashing powerful attacks. One of the human-shaped puppets blasted out with its palms as a golden millstone appeared in its hands. This millstone shimmered with destructive runic light, transforming into a golden tempest that could annihilate everything. Everywhere the tempest passed by, everything was reduced to dust. There was also a demonic rock puppet. Its wings were golden in color, and as it slashed out with its wings, a tempest capable of lacerating the void gushed forth with unfathomable speed. For those who were struck by its wings, their bodies were directly cleaved into two. There were no exceptions. For those who were further away, even if they were struck by the aftershocks, their bodies would still be lacerated. Each and every one of these combat puppets were inscribed with divine inscriptions that were infused with true intents. Not only that, they were extremely powerful to a shocking extent. In the short instant that the battle erupted, over 100 experts from the Royal Sacred Sect had already fallen. Their fresh blood dripped onto the sacred battle platform, dyeing this entire battlefield red with the blood of the hegemons of the Royal Sacred Sect. The spectators from afar all felt a sense of disbelief when they saw the combat puppets wreaking havoc. As for Zaixian and Lu Ziyan, they had long since borrowed treasures to flee the battlefield. Zaixian's countenance turned ashen as he stared at the battlefield. How can this be? Such combat puppets are extremely rare even in the external world. Unless one uses 6th-ranked immortal pills to exchange for them, 5th-ranked pills are simply insufficient. The medicine sovereign can already concoct immortal pills? Zaixian's countenance was extremely ugly to behold. There was still a scar on his face left behind by the medicine sovereign. If the medicine sovereign already had the ability to concoct immortal pills, even in the external world, he would definitely have many immortal-ranked friends. If that's the case, the threat he posed would be too great. Even the Sacred Emperor wouldn't be able to suppress him. If one wants to create such combat puppets, not only does one need an extremely high level of weaponsmithing ability, they also need to be proficient in the fusion of true intents. With so many combat puppets, it's clear that it's impossible for a single person to create them. The medicine sovereign found so many powerful weaponsmiths to create these combat puppets for him. Could it be that he has long since planned to seize the position of the Region Lord? Lu Ziyan stared at Zaixian. She could only think of this possibility. The position of the Region Lord was indeed very tempting. But if this person was really like what Zaixian said and could concoct immortal pills, there was no longer a need for him to become the Region Lord. Alchemists who could concoct immortal pills would never lack resources. He himself was a treasure trove, and if he joined a major power, they would naturally be willing to support him and provide him with the best resources, allowing him to continue improving his alchemy path. Kill Qin Wentian. The experts of the Royal Sacred Sect all fell into a state of panic. A bone-chilling voice rang out as a dazzling beam of cold light flashed on the sacred battle platform. A gigantic palm imprint covered the entire space as it smashed towards Qin Wentian. In front of and behind Qin Wentian, there were two combat puppets protecting him. At this moment, one of the gigantic Xuanwu puppet directly shielded Qin Wentian. The other puppet, the devil ape, roared in rage as boundless sound waves blasted out, causing the body of the expert rushing towards Qin Wentian to tremble. After which, the devil ape blasted out a tyrannical fist light that penetrated through the skies. Die. That expert had a solemn expression on his face. Astral light illuminated the skies as he borrowed the power of his constellation, transforming into a gigantic palm imprint that blasted downwards. Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out. The entire space was on the verge of exploding. A gigantic golden dragon descended from the skies as its gigantic palm imprint slammed towards that expert. At the same time, a great rock puppet appeared, its wings blotting out the sun as it swept downwards. That expert was surrounded by the three puppets as his countenance instantly paled. Both his palms blasted out in the air as the gigantic palm imprint blasted out in all directions. However, the combined attacks of those supreme combat puppets were extremely terrifying. Their attacks penetrated through everything, directly aiming for that expert, causing despair to appear in his heart. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out as the body of that expert was shattered into pieces. Qin Wentian stood below the gigantic Xuanwu puppet as he stared at the skies. That aura earlier was so powerful. Characters at the peak of celestial phenomenon weren't just a little bit stronger compared to those at the peak of the third level of celestial phenomenon. The medicine sovereign, how extravagant. Staring at the tyrannical combat puppets in the air, Qin Wentian felt shock in his heart. Seems like the medicine sovereign had long made preparations for this battle. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.